Established in 1994 by the government of the Bahamas, Parliamentary Channel 40 broadcasts gavel-to-gavel coverage of the proceedings of both houses of Parliament, providing up-to-date information, including live interviews and historical data on the workings of one of the most important branches of government. Good afternoon, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to the Parliamentary Channel's live coverage of the House of Assembly debate on the 2013-2014 budget continuing this afternoon. The MP for Exuma and Ragged Island, Anthony Moss, scheduled to begin his presentation when the House resumes. In a few moments, we expect that they will be ready to go. Again, we tell you that we are streaming live, livestream.com/ZNS Bahamas. Also, you can visit our website at znsbahamas.com, or we are also on Facebook. So there are all kinds of ways for you to watch us, and we want to welcome the listening audience from Radio 1540, the National Voice, as well as Radio 810 in Grand Bahama and 104.5. Last night, about 4 or 5 members presented during the afternoon session. One of those was the Member of Parliament for East Grand Bahama, Dr. Michael Darville. He had a lot to say. Let's listen to some of what Dr. Darville had to say yesterday during his presentation.
I remain committed to serve all the residents in my constituency and will continue to work tirelessly, diligently, to create employment and entrepreneurial opportunities, to bring relief to the poor, the downtrodden, and transform lives by creating programs that will empower all the residents of Pine Ridge, irrespective of their political affiliation. Mr. Speaker, residents in Queens Cove and in inner city areas of Pine Ridge, whose homes are in disrepair, are benefiting from Urban Renewal 2.0 small home repair program, which is ongoing throughout Grand Bahama as I speak. I have also recently held a massive cleanup program and campaign in conjunction with sanitation services in the private subdivisions in my constituency, which is not a part of the sanitation services cleanup schedule. The response for residents have been phenomenal, and we will continue these important programs as we prepare for an active hurricane season. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the residents of Hawksbill subdivision are now driving safely on the newly paved roads with the addition of a new roundabout, which is strategically placed on the accident-prone highway leading into this residential community. Mr. Speaker, in response to the safety concerns expressed to me by the residents in that community, I contacted the Town Planning Department at the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and it is through agitation on this Member of Parliament that these roads are in there today. No, I only report to my constituents. You will have a time to do yours. Yeah.
Member for Pine Ridge. Address the chair.
Mr. Speaker, last year my after-school program was brought to a complete halt because of a string of break-ins at my headquarters on Pioneers Way. Nonetheless, I would like to inform residents that I have found another centrally located venue, and very shortly we will relaunch this very effective program. Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that despite the lunch program that is available in our schools on Grand Bahama, too many children in my constituency are still going to school without breakfast. Therefore, beginning this school year, I will launch the Pine Ridge Breakfast Program from my constituency headquarters on Pioneers Way, which will enable the less fortunate children in my area to have the most important meal of the day and prepare them for learning. Mr. Speaker, as minister responsible for the entire island of Grand Bahama, through my ministry, all constituents, including those of Pine Ridge, will have access to government initiatives and programs as outlined in our Charter of Governance, and many residents, including the elderly, the unemployed, the disabled, who sustained damage in Hurricane Sandy will benefit from the NEMA roof repair program presently happening on Grand Bahama as I speak. Available, my brother. Contact NEMA. Just this weekend on Grand Bahama, we experienced severe weather conditions with rains. As a result, many families throughout Grand Bahama experienced flooding, and reports are coming in from east to west Grand Bahama, as well as many of the low-lying areas in Freeport, of flood damage to homes and business places. Teams from both the Department of Social Services, Urban Renewal are on the ground as I speak assessing these damages. I am pleased to report that emergency funding will be allocated to my ministry to assist those affected by the severe weather patterns and the floodings over the holiday weekend. Pine Ridge, let me assure you that I am focused and committed to working hard on your behalf. And this year was certainly a difficult one for all of us on Grand Bahama, and you have been patient with this administration as we implement our recovery plan. But despite the challenges, we must never give up hope, because as your representative, I remain optimistic that in this second half of 2013, the residents of Grand Bahama will see a turnaround in our local economy, because our policies will bring meaningful relief and employment opportunities from east to west. Mr. Speaker, it has been 1 year since the birth of the Ministry for Grand Bahama, and I can assure you that we have come a long way and evolved into a fully functional ministry. I am extremely proud.
The Member of Parliament for Pine Ridge in Northeast Grand Bahama, what he is the Minister for Grand Bahama, Dr. Michael Darville. The Member of Parliament for Exhume and Ragged Island, Anthony Moss, scheduled to take the floor as members begin debate this afternoon. Let's join them in the chamber as they prepare to begin.
And seek and sell. The kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchantman seeking goodly pearls, who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. A tourist in England some many years ago came into a certain little village, and he was trying for as much as he could muster to find out where he could get a drink, where he could find a tavern or a liquor store. Couldn't find any. By and by he saw an old man hobbling down the street. So I stopped him and said unto him, "Sir, what kind of place is this? A man can't even get a drink to quench his thirst." The old man straightened up on his walking cane and said, "Sir, over 100 years ago, a man by the name of John Wesley lived and preached here. And to this day, the town is still dry. Influence, even after you're gone, it lives on. God bless you as you exert that kind of an influence that the country needs at this time." Let us pray. Great God and our Father, you've given us our talents and our abilities and capabilities, and we thank you for the measure of health and strength that we enjoy. For the privilege of representing your people, we thank you for these parliamentarians. O Lord, in thy mercy, continue to give them the wisdom that they need to do their jobs and to make their speeches and to agree for the betterment of this nation. Bless our speaker today and the deputy and all those who shall make their contributions. We ask for your grace to sustain them, that their memory would be good, their speech and thoughts would be fluent, and may we all, Lord, be benefited as a result of today's setting. Bless us in a special way and make us sufficient for the great task today and tomorrow. And we thank you for hearing our prayer, which we offer through Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught us when we pray to say together, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. God bless you.
Good afternoon, honorable members. Welcome to the continuation of a sitting of this honorable House. Today is the afternoon session of June 11th, in the year of our Lord 2013. When we suspended our sitting, at our last sitting, we were debating second reading and committal of a bill for an act for the appropriation of diverse sums of money for and towards defraying the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas on revenue account for the financial year commencing 1st of July 2013 and ending the 30th of June 2014. In this regard, we were debating this bill that represents a compilation of bills and a resolution to borrow $465 million. Before we continue, the member for Fox Hill in his capacity once again as Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration has once again requested an opportunity to provide an updated statement with respect to the injury of the Vice Consul of the U.S. Embassy on Sunday past. It is the discretion of the Chair that the matter be brought forward at this time. The Chair will entertain the member for Fox Hill. The Chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to give the following statement. Yesterday, I indicated certain developments with regard to the issuance of U.S. visas in the Bahamas, consequent upon the injury of the Vice Consul at the U.S. Embassy in Nassau on Sunday last while she was going to church. I promised to keep the House informed of new developments as they became available. I'm pleased to report that processing of visa applications for Bahamians began again this morning at the U.S. Embassy. And I wish to publicly thank the Charge for his quick action in resolving an unexpectedly troublesome and complicated matter. Conspiracy theorists abound about what this or that action means. I wish only to deal with the facts as we know them. The explanation from the U.S. is simple. The Vice Consul was one of a specialized group of rare experts in her field, and the U.S. government indicated that they were challenged in her absence to find the level of expertise which is reposed in her. Thus, the brief surcease yesterday. Happily, that is behind us. In light of the statements in the social media and the position taken by the official opposition on this matter, I wish to say that it is always prudent to base one's commentary on the facts and not on speculation which is not based in reason or logic. It is the government's view that matters ought to be put in their proper context. A serious event transpired. We should not make it worse by exaggerated claims. For example, the opposition described what happened yesterday at the embassy as unprecedented and called for us to account for our stewardship. That is, as it should be, the calling into account, although it is regrettable that a political division takes place over this unfortunate incident. I remind them, however, that during one of their terms, a minister of the government was murdered. That too was unprecedented, but we got through it by logical and rational responses to a difficult problem. The perpetrators were brought to justice. With this, then, I urge all Bahamians to rededicate ourselves to ridding the country of crime. I am certain the professionals, as we speak, are taking the measures seeking to contain this very ugly incident, which we deeply regret and deplore, and trying to ensure that it does not happen again. They have the full support of the government in protecting all within our borders, whether visitors, diplomats, or ordinary citizens of the Bahamas. I promise again to keep the House informed of events as those events arise and if they warrant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. Order that the communication be brought up. in order that the statement do lie on the table. Thank you once again, Honourable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for the Exumas and Ragged Island.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give thanks and praise to the Almighty God for yet another opportunity to be a voice in this honorable House on behalf of the constituents of Great, Little, and the Exuma Keys and Ragged Island. Mr. Speaker, the presentation of the budget each year is an event that I would liken unto an expectant delivery. By and large, because of the pregnancy, it is inevitable that a newborn will materialize. However, Mr. Speaker, due to the unknown, there is much agitation, not knowing how the baby will look, verification of health, how the change will affect those connected to it, and the short and long-term implication of its arrival. Mr. Speaker, all of these questions could be either result in excitement or they could result in fear. But today, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to say that this baby of the government's 2013-2014 budget has arrived. And it is indeed focused. It is indeed sound and will undoubtedly, positively impact the people of the Bahamas in the immediate and expected future. Mr. Speaker, let me preface my remarks by saying that the torrential rains that we have just endured about a week ago have certainly left its mark. I could not believe the floodwaters from footages. It was amazing to see the many vehicles and homes that were adversely affected. To the people of the low-lying areas throughout the Bahamas, I wish to say that our thoughts and prayers are with all of you during this trying time. To the people of Exuma, you have not been forgotten. I wish to encourage you to work with the local arrangements and to report your losses. Mr. Speaker, permit me to extend a word of gratitude to each and every one of those who would have offered their time, their resources to assist persons who were affected by the flood in Exuma. And I speak of private citizens, I speak of the local government practitioners, I speak of all of those who would have lent a hand to assist a neighbor here and there. Mr. Speaker, there were a number of pocket areas along the Queens Highway that would have affected the daily travel and living of persons in Exuma. Mr. Speaker, I would go on to say that one thing that I was actually glad about is that it was nowhere close to what Tropical Storm Noel would have left on us in Exuma back in October of 2007. Mr. Speaker, there were stories that were spread throughout the media, the newspaper, as to how the subdivision was affected by the flood and of all of the damages. Mr. Speaker, But let the truth be told, Mr. Speaker. In my assessment, the house number 25, which is nearest to the highway or to the Morristown Road, received water in the yard, but there was no water inside the house. So the stories that were told prior to this are totally untrue. Mr. Speaker, at this time as we speak, the majority of the water throughout the roadways of the highway has either been pumped to the sea or some has evaporated. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, an area going into the settlement called the Forest, there are 2 pockets there of which we are still trying our endeavor best to have the water removed, where persons will be able to get back to their homes and to be able to do an assessment to see what else or what they can salvage from their homes. Mr. Speaker, again, I want to tell those persons who have been affected in that particular area, I want them to be encouraged. And again, I want to remind them to please work with the local government practitioners, the Ministry of Works, and the name of team. We want to also express thanks and gratitude for the name of team that traveled along with the DPM who came in the Sunday after the rains held up, and they did an assessment, and we want to remind those in Exuma to be encouraged, to let them know that help is on the way. For no man is indeed an island, Mr. Speaker. We all need each other in order to adequately perform our roles in all facets in life. And the management and staff at the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources and Local Government have indeed local government have been consistent in rendering support and assistance to both myself and to my esteemed colleague, the Honorable V. Alfred Gray, a member for my car, during our tenure at the ministry. So, Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to convey sincere appreciation to them at this time and to solicit their continued help in achieving the government's goal and objectives for agriculture, marine, and local government sector as we go into this new budgetary period. Mr. Speaker, we as a government have always advocated for the progress and upliftment of the people. We have sought to make people our priority. This is why my constituency activities have directly been streamlined to impact my people of Great, Little, the Exuma Keys, and Ragged Island. My constituency funds of $50,000 for the previous budget period can attest to this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have constructed in Morristown a ramp to assist the fishermen in that area with their offloading and onloading of their boats to make it them to have an easy access to the sea in the Morristown area. We have rebuilt a dock in Black Point. Mr. Speaker, a dock that was destroyed by Hurricane Irene. And we all remember Hurricane Irene was all the way back in 2011. But we have rebuilt that dock, Mr. Speaker. That dock was very important to the people of Black Point. As to where that dock is located, that's where they had the staging of the annual Black Point Regatta. And last year, they had to host the regatta at the government dock because this dock was damaged beyond repairs. But we have refurbished that dock, and I believe this coming August, the people of Black Point will return to their regatta site where they will host the 2013 regatta in Black Point. Mr. Speaker, we have refurbished a hill, the road going into Pepper Hill. Pepper Hill, which is just outside of Steventon. Now, somebody, they dare to say after this is said today that Pepper Hill is not at the back of Steventon, but it's at the back of Hearts. But I want to say that it's outside of Steventon because Steventon is known as the home of the great Pompey. And that's why I say it's outside of Steventon. Mr. Speaker, we have secured funding for the refurbishment of the basketball court in Rollville, of which the work should soon commence. And I trust that it is soon commenced. I will be following up in Rollville shortly. Mr. Speaker, the people have also benefited from our donations to the Exuma Marching Band, the Exuma Cancer Society, and we have also assisted with travel expenses for the basketball team for Ellen Coakley. We've also assisted in the purchasing of uniforms for a baseball camp, which again I want to pause to commend ASAP Sands, Woman Officer Ward, and all of those, I beg your pardon, ASP Sands, Woman Officer Ward, and all of the other officers who have been assisting with this junior baseball camp. And Mr. Speaker, it has been about 35 to 40 years since baseball was played in Exuma. As a youngster, I remember some of the senior people would have played baseball in Exuma. And some people would be surprised to hear this, but we actually play a lot of softball in Exuma. No, I don't like to talk about slow pitch. That of which you speak of is a slow pitch game. I love to talk about fast pitch. Let me stick to the baseball. Well, I must, Mr. Speaker, forgive me, but my colleagues are reminiscing on the game, and I must say that it was a slow pitch game, and the majority of the people in Exuma, whenever I'm playing softball, people want to come out to be entertained. So every now and then I have to do something that the crowd wishes for to happen. So if they wish for me to leave the yard, if I may speak, and those of you who play a lot of baseball and softball, you know, leaving the yard means you got to clear the fence. But if they wish for me to get strikeout, Mr. Speaker, then I have to do that as well. So there's been times, Mr. Speaker, when I didn't hit the third strike. And there's been times, Mr. Speaker, when I left the yard. But my colleague came over to visit us during, it was 2 years ago, we were playing a co-ed softball league. And I returned to Exuma the 23rd of October when they started the first game that night. And I had a severe pain in my chest. And I told my wife that I was not going to go to the game, so I stayed at home. And my church was playing that night, so the next day when I went to church, my pastor looked kind of down. And then he said to the congregation that St. John's lost to Ebenezer at Farmers Hill 9-1. Mr. Speaker, I felt so bad that I told the pastor, effective immediately, he along with the senior deacon, the chairman, who is my younger sibling, who is 5 years younger than I am, they lost the first game. So I said to them, Mr. Speaker, effective immediately, you guys do the praying, and I will take care of the playing. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, after the ensuing 11 months, the championship trophy sits today in St. John's Union Baptist Church. had some help, but I had a lot to do with it. Mr. Speaker, I want to also say that we were also encouraged to assist in social activities. We assisted the Monroyal Lodge with an annual Thanksgiving luncheon. We were able to assist with the expenses of some of the Class C regattas throughout the Exumas, such as the Farmers Key Regatta, the Rollville Regatta, the Bull Ridge Regatta, and the list goes on. You see, Exuma is the land of sailing, Mr. Speaker. It is the land of where we've got some great boat builders. Today I pause now to recognize and thank Mr. Huey Lloyd, who is down at Baratari, who has a fleet of gold boats. All of his boats, Mr. Speaker, that he's constructed are painted gold.
That's right.
I don't know if they represent what Baratari called the city by the sea. I don't know if it's a city of gold, but there's some significance about that. And I also want to pay tribute to another friend of mine, a schoolmate, who on the other side, out of Georgetown, who has also been a boat builder, a little younger than Huey Lloyd, but I speak of Leslie Buzzy Roll. And he has done a tremendous job in constructing C-class boats. He even had the tenacity to try to construct a Class B. And he did it again and again. And here today I am able to stand and to say that, Buzzy, you've done well. For the Lady Sonia, of which you have constructed, just a few days ago, was crowned the champion in the Class B sailing at the Long Island 46th Annual Regatta.
Good stuff.
Mr. Speaker, while I'm on the regatta business, I want to talk about a couple of friends that I've befriended in Long Island. And some of these folks are the Cartwrights, the Knowles, the Burrises. And there is such a rivalry going on with the Knowleses, Mr. Speaker. And there are some of the brothers who sail. And I speak of Mark Knowles, David Knowles, Stephen Knowles, Dawn Knowles. They all sail in various classes. But over this past weekend, leading into the final day, there was a must-win for Stephen and the Whitty K, as well as there was a must-win for David, and his boat was called the It Ain't Right. And we sat and we conversated well into the wee hours. But at 12 o'clock the next day, these young men had to line up to participate against each other. And my friend Stephen told me that he has never let me down and that he will never let me down. But today I want to congratulate David for defeating his brother Stephen and winning the Class C in the It Ain't Right. So Stephen, I want to use the words, the name of that boat, and to say to you that it just wasn't right. But next time I'm sure you're going to be ready for him. Along that line, I also want to congratulate Mr. Lundy Robertson, who hails from Black Point Exuma, one of the better skippers in the country, who won in the Class A division over there at Long Island. So we want to congratulate Lundy Robertson and his crew of the Red Stripe. Again, Buzzy Roll and his crew, the Lady Sonia in Class B, and David Knowles and his crew in Class C in the vessel It Ain't Right. Mr. Speaker, much has been done, but there is much that remains to be done. And I am committed to seeing that it is accomplished. I want to say to Baratari, I have not forgotten my promise to you. Potable water will be delivered to you soon. the Water and Sewage Corporation have you next on their agenda after they complete works being conducted in Williamstown, Barataria, you're next. Mr. Speaker, this is very important, as Barataria being the gateway to the Exuma Keys. Barataria, you hold much potential. It is also anticipated that your docking situation will be addressed for you, as well as you, the folks of Farmers Key. Your dock needs to be addressed, and I believe it will be addressed, for it is a must, as well as your health facilities. The local clinic needs to be addressed in Farmers Key. Mr. Speaker, as I speak of Farmers Key, there's one regret that I have. That while I speak to Farmers Key and the nation, while Farmers Key has access to the 6 channels that were granted to them by the former administration, it saddens me today, Mr. Speaker, to report that they're not able to see me. They're not able to hear. The audio is not working, and they're not able to see the contribution being made today. Farmers Key, we're going to fix it. Mr. Speaker, keeping connected is paramount to daily activities and to our very survival. Ragged Island has the service of a mail boat for a maximum of 3 times per month. And no flight service is offered at this time. It is my endeavor to agitate for charter service to Ragged Island at least once a week, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these services can be combined with charter services into Long Island or even into Exuma to assist with defraying the expenses in going into Ragged Island. I understand the population of Ragged Island is small, but I think as a government it is our responsibility to assist in providing the services for even the people at Ragged Island. Mr. Speaker, I say that to say that during our homecoming at Ragged Island, I was elated to have heard of a landing of a Bahamas Air Dash 8 airplane at Ragged Island Airport. Mr. Speaker, the landing of a Dash 8 at Ragged Island Airport in Ragged Island. I had no idea, Mr. Speaker, that they could have been accommodated. But to my surprise, I've learned that the airstrip is actually some 3,800 feet long. Mr. Speaker, this is a very promising feature for Ragged Island, as there are 2 bonefish lodges, and there are other attractions for tourists to visit and to see. Mr. Speaker, we ought to assist the good people of Ragged Island. Mr. Speaker, my portfolio, agriculture, marine resources, and local government, is near and dear to my heart. The 2013-2014 budget solidifies the government's endeavor of having made agriculture a priority. There is simply no way of escaping the fact that food is a must, and without it, we cannot survive. Mr. Speaker, to put this responsibility in the hands of others is not wise. We in the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources, and Local Government have partnered with stakeholders to undertake the daunting task of decreasing our food import bill. With the programs and projects, we have instituted the people of the Bahamas. We can soon be at ease with the knowledge of saying that we grow what we can and only buy what we must. Our imports are being closely monitored and quotas enforced. We continue to protect what is ours through conservation and for sustainability. Our marine resources belong to us, the people of the Bahamas, and to put in layman's terms, we cannot risk eating all at once, damaging it or having it stolen from under our noses. We must protect what is ours. Mr. Speaker, we engage in joint efforts with the Royal Bahamas Defense Force to keep poachers at bay, enforcing our closed season and marine protected areas, and ensuring that best practices are utilized and invasive species are controlled. Mr. Speaker, let me repeat, we must protect what is ours because our marine resources are precious to us. They have sustainability and they have substantial worth and great exporting potential. We are ensuring that we meet world standards that should continue to allow them to significantly impact our economy. Mr. Speaker, when we think about food, we cannot escape the fact that the latest technology advancement made it easier to produce. And with the advanced made measures are imperative to ensuring safety and health issues are adequately addressed. All this lies within the perimeters of continued education. Mr. Speaker, the agriculture school in Andros, which is essential is to train students in the field of agriculture, which should assist with future production, increased skills, base, and competent human resources in this sector. Our ministry, Mr. Speaker, is not just concerned with the advancement of people in New Providence or in Grand Bahama, but I am pleased to say that the Family Islands are a part of our endeavors throughout our local government initiatives. With the challenging economic times, it is unfortunate that the 2013-2014 budget allocations have remained constant for the various Family Islands. The Family Island regattas are economic boosters for all our islands. We have held 16 successful regattas for the preceding year and will continue to host them in our new budgets, of which those who would have read the budget will see that this government has allocated an additional $25,000 towards the contribution of various regattas. The Junior Council program will also continue to ensure the longevity of local government. Its initiative ensures that the young people are properly prepared to take the helm for future generations. I'm also pleased that our parking houses are being upgraded and dear to home, Mr. Speaker. Exuma will soon be able to boast of their reconstructed parking house. Plans are in the works for it, and progress is being made daily. Also relative to the Family Islands, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister in his communication talked about creation of jobs. And since he has agreed to extend the duty-free exemption for construction material, I am excited because this would certainly bring life back into the construction field throughout the Bahamas, including the entire Family Islands. Mr. Speaker, when I look at a community such as Staniel Key, and I think of the infrastructural needs, some that come to mind, Mr. Speaker, because Staniel Key has one of the busiest airports within our country, Mr. Speaker, but the ramp at Staniel Key has fallen into a state of disrepair. Their dock needs to be addressed. The clinic needs to be addressed. And the school needs to be addressed. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the people of Staniel Key that I have already spoken to the minister responsible, who's the member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador, and in short order we shall be visiting that part of the exhumers to look at how best we can address and set a priority list as to how we will address the infrastructure that is needed within Staniel Key. And then I believe we will be able to move to another level where we can cause Staniel Key to become a port of entry. And then, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to see the benefits as the amounts will be deposited into the public treasury. Further, Mr. Speaker, the local government workers who have been disenfranchised for years will be given similar benefits to that of central government workers. Persons meeting specified requirements will to be regularized as ordinary civil servants. And I believe in the various corners throughout the Family Islands, they are sitting in an amen corner, giving thanks for this government and its consideration. Mr. Speaker, and to ensure that these initiatives will take place, the Local Government Act will be amended to better define the perimeters for the employment of persons to provide service to local government council. Mr. Speaker, as you might be aware, the Department of Cooperatives is also a part of my ministry's responsibility. We cannot forget the positive injection that credit unions make to our economy annually. The cooperative sector is undergoing a changing regulatory regime to comply with industry expectations and should prove to be more beneficial to the Bahamas. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on about the positive that is being done and will be done within this budgetary period within the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources, and local government. But, Mr. Speaker, permit me to turn to some concerns that I have within my constituency. One, Mr. Speaker, a major concern that we have, Mr. Speaker, is that when it comes to bone fishing within the exhumers, we found, Mr. Speaker, where we've been placed, the situation now where winter residents who come and would seek the service of a bonefish guide to take them out to the flats to show them where the bones are, and on their next visit on the third or fourth, they're now going out and not utilizing the services of the bonefish guides. We need to find a way, Mr. Speaker, to address this situation. It is about to get out of hand in my constituency. Mr. Speaker, The Prime Minister in his communication drew reference to the need of sporting facilities in various communities. And I want to commend my colleague who sits to my left, but apparently this afternoon he sits to my right, for dispatching his team. Immediately after the Prime Minister made the communication, his team was on the ground in Exuma, have already looked and have already identified the property as to where these facilities will be. If his last name was Jackson, Mr. Speaker, I would refer to him as Action Jackson. But I want to just say, go ahead, Johnson. Go ahead.
Member for Carmichael.
I beg your pardon?
Member for Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Go ahead, Johnson, member for Carmichael.
Well done.
Permit me, Mr. Speaker, to extend a word of congratulations to all of those throughout my constituency who will be graduating from the various schools, whether it's being the primary level, private schools, or even Ellen Coakley High School, as they prepare and would have been prepared to go on to higher learning institutions, or to those who will be going in search of jobs out there in the world. I want to extend a word of congratulations to all of them. I wish them well, and I know that they will do well simply because they had their early education within the district of Exuma. Mr. Speaker, again, I would want to say to the government about the importance of seeking to find one of these lending institutions, one of these banks, and understanding the importance of their service into the Exuma Keys. We continuously talk about all of the millions of dollars that pass through the Exuma Keys and all of the investment. But, Mr. Speaker, I find it so amazing that we are not able to convince one of the banks to even open a satellite branch within the Exuma Keys, where a person would be able to have this service right at their fingertips. Mr. Speaker, this will take away from somebody who has a check for $1,000 and who wishes to cash their check, who then has to charter a boat to Barataria and then take a taxi from Barataria to Georgetown, or take a charter from the Keys to Nassau. This would take away that added expense, because in some incident, when you do that, Mr. Speaker, their entire check would have been lost. Mr. Speaker, with that said, I want to say that there's something that seriously needs to be addressed in Exuma, Mr. Speaker. While Exuma has an international airport, I want to say, in my opinion, I think that we have the worst run airport in the country. Meaning, Mr. Speaker, that it's poorly managed. Poorly managed. Mr. Speaker, I am one who try to get back to my constituency every weekend if I don't have an assignment to go elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, it is almost next to nil for the one who is supposed to be in charge of the Exuma International Airport. I've never seen her in place. Sometimes I come out on Bahamas Air that comes and leaves Exuma shortly after 7. They're never in place. So sometimes I intentionally come via Sky Bahamas, which leaves Exuma after 9, Mr. Speaker. So there are some days when I get to the House of Assembly and I am late because I wait to see who's in place.
And you've never seen them.
I beg your pardon, sir? Don't say that. And I've never seen them. Mr. Speaker, what what was so troubling yesterday as I waited for my aircraft to show up in Exumo is that even when it comes to the changing of a light bulb, Mr. Speaker, a light bulb, and that's poor management. If you got a call on a member of parliament to say you need a bulb change,
How many MPs does it take to change the light bulb?
no, but Mr. Speaker, I told them they have the wrong person arrested. I am not the one who give out light bulbs. For he's no more. I don't give out the light bulbs.
Nice one, nice one. Nice
I don't give out light bulbs. If you
You're warming up, you're warming up.
if you're being paid to do a job, and I think you ought to do your job, Mr. Speaker, and I think this needs to be addressed. This needs to be addressed ASAP. That one right?
Yeah.
The reason why that one got to be right is that we need to understand as a government that the honeymoon is over. We've already served the people of the Bahamas for a year. The honeymoon is over. It's time for us to move forward.
Get it right.
Let's get it right. Let's fix it.
This budget is budget.
Mr. Speaker, lastly, the Department of Finance, Mr. Speaker, in Exuma we've caused provisions for a place to operate the Treasury's Department, Mr. Speaker, of which the government has been paying the taxpayers' money for rent for these facilities for months. For months, Mr. Speaker. But yet we're not able to put the staff in this facility, Mr. Speaker. So the people of Exuma continuously ask, when are we going to put adequate staffing into the Department of Treasury? And I know those who are responsible for finance are listening, and so I'm going to say it again, the honeymoon is over. We as a government, let us put our foot forward. We've been charged with the responsibility, of course. That's why I said it, and I can say it again. We have been charged with the responsibility, Mr. Speaker. The honeymoon is over. And now that I'm in New Providence, I'll be walking into some offices, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
I'm not going to be calling anymore.
Come on, then.
I'm going to be walking into some offices. Yes. Because when I go to Exuma, and questions are being asked, I believe in results. Mr. Speaker, I end with these words. I end with these words, Mr. Speaker, that if we are working together to use what we have, to do as much as we can for this great country, the Bahamas, we can do what we can. Mr. Speaker, the Exumas on Ragged Island supports this budget of 2013-2014.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Mount Moriah.
Mr. Speaker,
firstly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Almighty God for my being here today. I'm here only through His grace and His mercy, and that's from the heart. Further, Mr. Speaker, I cannot begin any contribution without being mindful of the great opportunity that the people of the great constituency of Mount Moriah have afforded me. Mr. Speaker, I thank them from the bottom of my heart, and I was elected to bring servant leadership. Servant leadership, Mr. Speaker. It's not about being haughty. It's about serving people. And I trust that all members of this chamber are of the same mind, and I know that they are. Mr. Speaker, I remind them that the task at hand, and these are the constituents of Mount Moriah, is not simple. It's not easy. It takes time and patience and requires dedication. And Mr. Speaker, more than anything else, I cannot fight this battle alone. It takes every member of the constituency of Mount Moriah to assist me in carrying out their mandate. I carry out their mandate. Mr. Speaker, I guarantee you that I'm here to bring change in the way that future representatives of Mount Moriah will treat its constituents. As we move forward, the landscape of our community will change for the better. This I am certain of. However, it takes time to repair joblessness. It does not happen overnight. It takes time to provide educational opportunities desperately needed by our young people so that they can take their rightful places in our country. It takes time to bring relief to the suffering and the homeless. It takes creativity and perseverance to break the back of crime that seems to be second nature to a small group of our countrymen, Mr. Speaker. It's only a small group, you know. It's not vast. It's a small group of our countrymen who are wreaking this havoc upon us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for lack of a better word, I can only describe them as domestic terrorists, because that's what they are, who are causing harm to our visitors, but also our law-abiding citizens. Bahamians are suffering as well. Mr. Speaker, I am certain that our Minister of National Security, the member for Ben and Grants Town, our State Minister for National Security, along with a very able and hard-working Commissioner of Police, Mr. Ellison Grainslade. Mr. Speaker, you know, we talk about policing in the Bahamas a lot. We make it seem easy. But, you know, walk a mile in the commissioner's shoes and see what he goes through every day. No one says thank you to that man. All the work that he does, and he does it quietly. He's not in the media often. But I'm certain that he is working hard with his executive management team to bring relief to our country. So I'd like to thank him as well, publicly, because I know the job is hard. Mr. Speaker, there's a saying I heard my grandmother said once. You have a long rope with a short catch. Mr. Speaker, domestic terror should be well. I say no more on that issue. Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate the graduation class of 2013 of C.W. Sawyer Primary School. Mr. Speaker, that school is not situated within my constituency, but it's right on the border, so many of the young children who live in my constituency attend that school. And I've basically adopted that school in some respects so that I can stay close to my community. I want to stay close to those children, because if we can influence them, we can have a better society down the road. I'd like to congratulate their principal, Ms. Constance Saunders, who's done an excellent job at that school. Today was their graduation. Unfortunately, I could not make it. But I'd like to congratulate them in their class of 2013 and their principal. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to congratulate the principal, Mr. Saunders, at the Government High School and their class of 2013. They're doing a great job, and Government High, some help is on the way from BAIC. I'll leave it at that for now. I also wish to thank the wonderful team at the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation for their support and dedicated commitment to duty, Mr. Speaker. I am fortunate to have them support me. The successes of the corporation can be credited to them in great measure. Last but no means least, Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank my family for their unwavering support in circumstances for them which is a sacrifice for them. But they stand by me 100%, and I thank them for that. Mr. Speaker, as Executive Chairman of the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation, it is my distinct pleasure to make my contribution to the 2013-2014 national budget debate of our beautiful country. As we approach our 40th anniversary as a sovereign and independent state, I cannot resist the temptation to reflect upon that 40-year journey. It has been one of tremendous growth and advancement for our people and our country. I am proud to say, and Mr. Speaker, before I even started this contribution, I like to consider myself as someone who brings facts. I like to bring facts to this place because this is a place of truth and facts. And we have to give credit where credit is due, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to say that the Progressive Liberal Party has been at the helm of this nation for 31 of those productive years. These were not idle years, Mr. Speaker. These were years of tremendous growth, advancement, prosperity, and productivity for our country. In the first 25 years of that rule, Mr. Speaker, that party laid the foundation for all the great successes that have followed since independence. The national institutions that were developed during the first Progressive Liberal Party administration have yet to be rivaled by any successive administration. The Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation was one of those very important national institutions that was established under the PLP, the first PLP administration, and with profound results. Mr. Speaker, April of 2012 marked the 30th year of the corporation's existence. During those 30 years, the corporation did a marvelous job in carrying out its mandate. After the general elections of 2012, Mr. Speaker, I was assigned the task to carry the corporation to the next level. I have a vision for the Bahamas Agricultural Industrial Corporation. Mr. Speaker, my vision for the corporation will be carried out in tandem with the PLP's Charter for Governance. I am a member of a great team, Mr. Speaker, a talented team, a knowledgeable team. BAIC enthusiastically accepts the new developmental and technical role it is playing as we move forward. BAIC will become an even greater player in the overall development of the Bahamas in the future. During its 30 years of existence, the corporation has assisted many Bahamians in realizing their business dreams and goals in the following sectors: agriculture, fisheries, manufacturing, services, tourism, and handicraft. While it is my intention to continue ongoing initiatives in the above-mentioned sectors, my vision also incorporates the following: a new start, rebranding BAIC, refocusing and reevaluating for the 21st century. A new state-of-the-art headquarters at the Soldier Road Industrial Park. Increased and enhanced revenue stream which will enable the corporation to expand its services to the Bahamian public with a lesser reliance on central government for funding. The advancement of initiatives which incorporates the government and the corporation's mandate with added emphasis on light industry, tourism-related projects, and solar energy projects. A greater utilization of the corporation's present and proposed land holdings to stimulate and enhance commerce in New Providence and the Family Islands. Fast-tracking the move of embracing, enhancing, and utilizing cutting-edge technology. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed my pleasure to advise that the corporation has been mandated by the government of the Bahamas to play a leading and pivotal role with respect to the establishment of the Bahamas Agricultural and Marine Science Institute in North Andros at the former Bartard site. We must recognize the Right Honorable Member for Centerville for his rededication, because it is not new for him. The member for Centerville has been pushing for this from the last PRP administration. So he's just picking up the baton again and moving it forward. And this time, Mr. Speaker, it will happen. We will do this with a sense of urgency. We want to put down a solid foundation, Mr. Speaker, so no one can come behind and move this. We want this to be not only a center of excellence, but an institution that is a part of the landscape of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Here, here. Here, here.
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honorable Member for Centerville has a goal of food security for our nation. What we need to, we tend to be relaxed in the Bahamas. We tend to believe that we are on safe grounds. We tend to believe that we can be comfortable in this place. But little do we know, Mr. Speaker, that we have no food security in this country. There is none. Mr. Speaker, if that boat does not come in every 3 days or every 5 days, Mr. Speaker, the shelves in these food stores that we frequent as Bahamians would be bare. That's just how serious it is. We're not, at this time, doing enough to feed ourselves. We rely on others to feed us, Mr. Speaker. And it has a lot of ramifications when we do that. Not only from a food supply, but even the food that we get, Mr. Speaker. How do we know what we're eating? Quality. We're not producing it. We don't know what kind of quality we're eating. Mr. Speaker, and it's common knowledge that we get a lot of the rejects in our market. That's what we get in the Bahamas. But we sit idly by, and some people in our society, Mr. Speaker, exactly, they believe in this export market, eating from overseas, not growing our own food. People think that we are crazy to speak about food security. But, Mr. Speaker, let there be a catastrophe to our neighbors, and not even the entire country. Let South Florida have a problem, Mr. Speaker, and you'll see how fast we look at trying to grow our own food in the Bahamas. Yes. Because once they have a problem, they ain't gonna check for us. We are not their first priority. We are not their first priority. We have to be our own first priority. They will feed themselves first and give us the rejects. Exactly. They are our friends, but our friends don't love us more than they love themselves. Remember that. We need to take this seriously. And this institution that our Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Member for Centerville, is putting online is the foundation upon which we can build this food security. Mr. Speaker, it is the foundation, because what it does, it will train our young people, it will train those who are in the business, or retrain them so that they can use cutting-edge technology. It will also ensure that future generations have that foundation to rely on to start the process of feeding ourselves, bringing food security. And there is a plan, Mr. Speaker, there is a plan. In the past, Mr. Speaker, food security has been taken very lightly. And there are those who believe that it is a waste of time. I find it's very short-sighted. The fact is that if we do not receive food shipments, as I mentioned earlier, in our country on a weekly basis, the shelves of our food stores will be empty. The cupboard, Mr. Speaker, in other words, will be bare. Virtually all of our bread basket items, Mr. Speaker, are imported. This should not be taken lightly. A word to the wise is sufficient. As a result of the work of the Planning Committee, which is inclusive of the corporation, a site plan of approximately 460 acres has been designated. The same comprises 55.78 acres as the administrative block and 404.05 acres for the commercial tutorial school. In addition to the above, the committee is in the process of identifying several hundred acres that would permit the expansion of the institute in the future, inclusive of incorporation of marine, research marine and forestry-related matters. It is projected that the institute will commence in January 2014, utilizing in the first instance the existing structures, which will be renovated and refitted with the most modern and cutting-edge technology. The institute will also bring a number of jobs to the island of Andros, both during construction phase and after the institute is up and running. It is intended that the institute will offer the following: skills training, associate degrees in agriculture, diplomas in agriculture, professional development. Mr. Speaker, I move on to the Soldier Road Industrial Park. Mr. Speaker, this park was created primarily as an industrial park for manufacturing and light industrial companies. Upon my assumption as executive chairman, I held a number of meetings with tenants personally in the park. They advised of their challenges of the challenges that they were having, of which I lent a sympathetic ear. But, Mr. Speaker, in a lot of cases, Mr. Speaker, not all, Mr. Speaker, we have some good tenants in that park, tenants who are paying their monthly rents and their monthly rates. But, Mr. Speaker, there are those tenants who are the authors of their own demise. Mr. Speaker, I am indeed delighted to report that, having met with the tenants on a number of occasions, a new day is on the horizon for the Soldier Road Industrial Park, and the tenants are aware of the same. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, there are some tenants who are beyond help, and those tenants will be asked to leave so that other Bahamians can have the opportunity to pursue their dreams as business owners. This process has already begun. Again, it is unfortunate, but that is the nature of business. The first order of business will be the construction of a new headquarters for the corporation at the Soldier Road Industrial Park. This new complex will have green features, inclusive of solar fixtures. The roads will be repaved, bridges constructed, and green spaces will be created. To assist our tenants in the park, the corporation has already identified a staff member and a team who will provide assistance with respect to the procurement, and we will approach the government and government corporations and government ministries with reference to this, whereby if tenants in the park can produce quality products, that we would ask that we support them, because that is where industry starts in a country. We have to support our own. Let's stop buying the imported materials that can be made right there in the park. Let us support these people so that their businesses can work. Okay? So we want to ensure that once they're producing quality product, that government ministries and other government corporations will support them by purchasing these products. I've given the tenants the assurance that we will look into this, but they must produce quality products at comparative prices. The corporation will then assist in ensuring that they have an opportunity to get a portion of the government purchases. Via this facility, jobs will also be created and retained, Mr. Speaker. It takes manpower to renovate and put the new structures in place. Let me assure you that via the above initiatives and others, the Soldier Road Industrial Park will be revived and become a place where Bahamians from all aspects of the society will be proud to visit. Once revived, the park will also serve as a site for various events like fairs and trade shows. Mr. Speaker, BAIC owns and manages, administers, or is involved with one of the largest portfolios of properties in the Bahamas. These properties are located in New Providence, Eleuthera, Abaco, Grand Bahama, and Andros. it is noted that via these properties, there have been some level of success in stimulating agriculture and industry and services, and has caused some economic growth. But it is further noted that the properties in the Family Islands have remained mostly undeveloped to the extent that their impact to the local communities in particular and the Bahamas in general have been mostly negligible. Notwithstanding the same, the corporation continues to receive requests for the lease of land for agricultural, industrial, touristic, and related purposes. Mr. Speaker, the principles outlined in the Charter for Governance notes the following: a full awareness that most jobs must be created in the private sector rather than by the government. While maintaining an emphasis on job creation, the government will seek to expand Bahamian ownership of the economy. Wherein foreign direct investments are important for the Bahamas, so is increasing local entrepreneurship. Increasing opportunities to dramatically expand the role of Bahamians as employers through initiatives like the National Initiative in Resort Development. Ongoing projects in tourism, agriculture, fisheries, and mariculture will reverse the trend of residents leaving the Family Islands to find employment. Many residents from our Family Islands will return home seeking opportunities to build and develop their native lands, their native islands, and to help to cultivate their communities. Mr. Speaker, with a view of expanding opportunities for Bahamians to participate in the further development of the Bahamas, especially the Family Islands, in an effort to increase the revenue stream into the coffers of the corporation and to assist in reversing the urban drift from the Family Islands, the corporation has commenced a program of greater utilization of its land holdings. It is anticipated that via this methodology and the various government incentives, there will be a radical and sustained shift with respect to the development of the above-mentioned sectors, in particular New Providence and the Family Islands in general. Farmers, especially young persons who having received their training at the Bahamas Agricultural and Marine Science Institute, can now return home and farm on land leased by the corporation. The corporation is of the view that agriculture is an engine for economic development with the capacity of achieving sustainable economic growth, food security, and wealth creation, especially in the Family Islands, wherein there is a continued role for the government. The private sector, inclusive of farmers' associations, has a key role to play in the further development of agriculture in the Bahamas. The policies and initiatives pursued must be one that enhances the development of a modern agricultural sector utilizing best practices. Mr. Speaker, it is a core value of the government of the Bahamas to maximize its potential in ensuring that the agricultural sector be an integral part of any sustainable economic development plan through a new agriculture program designed to grow what we can, buy what we must, reflecting an import substitution strategy, thereby ensuring self-sufficiency in production and providing the nation as a whole while maximizing on employment creation, training, retraining, and industrial development. During 2013, the Agriculture Division will be guided by the overall goals of the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation, BAIC, which are to stimulate, facilitate, and encourage the development of agriculture in the Bahamas, to assist in the creation and development of commerce and industry within the to expand and create opportunities for Bahamians to participate in the economic development of this great country. Mr. Speaker, I go back to the point, grow what we can, buy what we must. Mr. Speaker, this is an important goal for us. We need to look at growing what we can. We are not saying that the Bahamas can produce all the finest fruits and vegetables. We can, in some cases. We have, our soil is suited to certain things, Mr. Speaker. But at present, Mr. Speaker, we're not even looking at growing in the way that we can grow. Mr. Speaker, on a trip to Jamaica, in trying to see what their agricultural research institutes were doing, Mr. Speaker, it came to my attention that if we can grow enough onions, Mr. Speaker, that the Jamaican market would consume those onions for us. We can sell onions to Jamaica, Mr. Speaker. What we do, we have them rotting at those packing houses, or we have them in the fields that are rotting as well, from what I saw on Andros. Mr. Speaker, there has to be something wrong with that. There has to be something wrong with that, Mr. Speaker. Why aren't we trying to expand on our agricultural product presently? I'm certain that this administration, Mr. Speaker, is committed to doing that, Mr. Speaker. We play a small part. There are other parts, Mr. Speaker, to that are playing their roles as well. But we need to bite the bullet, so to say, as far as agriculture in the Bahamas is concerned. We pay lip service to that. Too much, Mr. Speaker, too much lip service. This member, right honorable member for Sandoval, is putting his money where his mouth is. He's ensuring that when he leaves here, and you know what, we talk about legacy all the time in this place. Mr. Speaker, believe it or not, there is the possibility that this may be probably one of the biggest parts of the legacy for the right honorable member for Sandoval. You see, Mr. Speaker, because this school will not be going anywhere. This will be there infinitum. Mr. Speaker, during this budget period, some of the BAIC initiatives in the agricultural sector are as follows. Her Majesty's Prison Agricultural Project. Mr. Speaker, we are committed, and we have already started doing some of the work of planting 2 acres of vegetables at Her Majesty's Prison with the assistance of prisoners. Prisoners are actually doing this project. We are providing the expertise and the equipment and the seeds and whatever else. Also at the prison, we are also putting in place small sheep and or goat production. We are trying to get 5 acres up and running of small sheep and goats for the prison. Fruit tree propagation as well, Mr. Speaker, 3 acres. We believe, and this is a great project because what it does is, listen, these young men, they go there, and we let them sit around, Mr. Speaker. We let them become idle, Mr. Speaker. They come out of that place with no skills. Mr. Speaker, and unfortunately, we have a society that demonizes young men once they've made mistakes. This is an opportunity for them to work for themselves, Mr. Speaker. If they can learn how to farm while they're in there, if they can learn to do something constructive, maybe they won't be on our streets wreaking havoc after they leave that place. Yes. So it's important that we look after these young men. I believe that there are 99% of the people in this country, I believe that they're reformable. You have that 1%, Mr. Speaker, that you cannot reform. That 1%, Mr. Speaker, who presently are doing us so much damage on our streets and in our homes at night. Mr. Speaker, I believe that 1% cannot be reformed. But I believe that 99% of these young men, if we put time and energy and show them a little bit of love, Mr. Speaker, I believe that they can reform themselves, especially if they come out of prison and have something to do, Mr. Speaker. Yes. Agriculture is a way to deal with that. Mr. Speaker, another project that we are presently working on is the Government High School project. Mr. Speaker, what we intend to do for the Government High School is we will install, BAIC at BAIC's expense, will be installing a state-of-the-art greenhouse at the government high school, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is in line with BAIC's initiative to train young people to understand farming. Farming in the Bahamas is no longer that break-back operation where you bend down and do pothole farm or you farm, that's whatever methods they were using before. God bless them, but farming has moved on from that. Mr. Speaker, farming today is about technology. It's about equipment. It's about making making sure that you're on the cutting edge. That's how we maximize our farming potential. We need to be on the cutting edge of farming. Okay? And that, I am certain, will attract young people. Mr. Speaker, there was a phrase that was coined by a young man that I know. He said, for young people to get into farming, we got to make farming look sexy. It's as simple as that. We got to make farming look sexy to these young people. Listen, if we go out there and tell them they got to go in the field, and they got to bend down and bend over and dig through potholes, Mr. Speaker, we ain't gonna have no farming product. Mr. Speaker, it's about making farming attractive to our young people. And the only way that we can do that is if we bring technology into farming. Mr. Speaker, once we do that, I guarantee you we'll have some young people interested in farming. So, Mr. Speaker, another point also is that greenhouse farming is the new measure on how successful or how productive your farming sector is, your agricultural sector is. They look at how many greenhouses you have in your country. Mr. Speaker, under this watch, we will bring as many greenhouses as we can to our agricultural sector. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, it's imperative that we do this, Mr. Speaker. What you can grow on an acre, on 10 acres of land, you can probably grow in one small greenhouse. Yeah. So it's less, it takes up less land. You get the same high yield. And you use, yes, better quality because you have climate control. You control the pests and whatever else. You get a more uniform product that is more appealable to wholesalers and retailers. Greenhouse farming is the future. Greenhouse farming is the future. We need to get as many greenhouses in our country as possible. Mr. Speaker, I even plan one of the plans, and I want to discuss that with the member for Michael. We want to put a greenhouse, a state-of-the-art greenhouse, on the island of Inagua, which is the furthest south in our island chain. Inagua don't grow no fresh vegetables. Yeah. Let us put a greenhouse in Inagua and grow vegetables in Inagua. It's possible. Mr. Speaker, further with the greenhouse for Government High, that will be in place over the next 4 months, hopefully. We plan to also bring to Government High School vegetable gardens, shade house production, small poultry unit and a small pig unit, small plant propagation unit. Mr. Speaker, we would like Government High to be our model school for agriculture moving forward. We know that there are other schools who are doing it. We believe that Government High is well suited for it. It has the land to do it. And Government High sits squarely in the constituency of Mount Moriah as well. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this project has begun and the corporation is assisted with the provisions of an assortment of vegetable seeds. This Government High School project serves as a template feeder system to attract our youth to agriculture. Mr. Speaker, it is through efforts like this that demonstrable progress will be made in changing the collective mindsets regarding agricultural and extension food security. Mr. Speaker, there's and I cannot elaborate too much on this point. There's the idea there that farming is for old people, that farming is not a profession that you can be a part of. Mr. Speaker, I went as a part of the establishment of the Marine Research, the Bahamas Agriculture Marine Science Institute in Andros. I visited the North Andros High School, and I must commend Mr. Badu and the job that they are doing there. But, Mr. Speaker, when the camera came to those young people who attended that school and who were carrying out those hydroponics, Mr. Speaker, none of them wanted to be interviewed. You know why? Because they are not convinced. We have not convinced them that they should be farmers in the future. These are young people who are growing fruit, vegetables hydroponically, but they do not want to be farmers. There has to be something wrong in our process, and we want to change this. We want to change how these young people think. We need to instill in them, listen, farmers can be millionaires. Farmers can make millions of dollars once it's done correctly, once it's done in an efficient manner, and once we look at the business side of farming. You see, another problem that we have in the Bahamas, we have farmers who are not businessmen. We need farmers to be businessmen as well. We need farmers to listen. All of that product that you grow in that will fail as a farmer. You will fail as a farmer. We need to ensure that our children and our young people know that, listen, you can become a millionaire by tilling the earth. And there's nothing wrong with that. Mr. Speaker, moving forward the North Andros Initiative, the establishment of the Bahamas Agricultural and Marine Science Institute in collaboration with several government agencies and entities, assisting in upgrading the North Andros packing house into an agribusiness center. Mr. Speaker, again, that's going back to the idea that farming is not only crop production or crop cultivation, it is also knowing how to get that product to market and how to maximize your earnings once you have that product to market. That's where you get successful farmers, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know, as I think about it and I look more, there are dozens of individuals coming to the Bahamas and asking to partake in farming projects. So they want to produce some sort of farm project in the Bahamas, either to grow cattle or to grow fruits or vegetables or whatever. Mr. Speaker, there has to be money in it. There's no foreign investor who would come in any country. No foreign investor will come here if he knew that he would lose money here in farming. So there has to be something going on. There has to be a way to do this. And we need to take advantage of this as individuals. If they are doing it, if they're coming into this country and doing it, we can do it here as well. And we need to spread that. Mr. Speaker, we further want to assist in the further development and improvement of the BAIC satellite livestock farms. The slogan, grow what we can and buy what we must. This program has been modified from buy fresh, buy Bahamian, to grow what we can and buy what we must. The objective of this initiative is to increase the awareness of demand for local produce and also seek to reduce the importation of some of the commodities, which we can grow by over 30% over the next 5 years. Mr. Speaker, in this vein, grow what we can, buy what we must. Mr. Speaker, at BAIC, we are in the process of forming a unit at BAIC. The sole purpose of this unit will be to liaise with farmers out there who are growing crops. We don't want to just get them when the crop is being harvested. We want to be able to sell ahead so that we can go to Andros, we can send our team to Andros after getting commitments from the retailers or wholesalers here. That listen, if you can grow 10 acres of onions, if you can grow 5 acres of tomatoes, if you can grow 2 acres of cucumbers or 20 acres of citrus, we can sell that for you. There will be a team at BAIC moving forward, led by a young Bahamian businessman. That's all that they will do. All they're going to do is they're going to go out there, deal with retailers, they're going to deal with wholesalers, selling Bahamian product that is grown in the Bahamas by farmers. They will, after they have those sales secured, Mr. Speaker, they will go to a farm in Andres and say, listen, if you can produce 10 acres of onions, I can sell those 10 acres for you. Another farm, if you can produce 10 acres of cucumbers, we can sell those for you. That is where we need to go.
Yes.
Part of the problem with farming in the Bahamas is it's not been marketed. We need to market farmers. We need to market farming. That is the way forward. We need to market farmers and farming in the Bahamas. If we just sit there and not market them, Mr. Speaker, I went to Andres a few weeks ago, and in the fields there were tons and tons of onions. Sorry, not onions, tomatoes. Tomatoes on the ground, Mr. Speaker. Edible tomatoes, Mr. Speaker. As a matter of fact, some of the folks who were with me, Mr. Speaker, picked a few of them up, washed them, and ate them on the spot. So they are edible, Mr. Speaker, but they're on the ground, wasting away, Mr. Speaker. Mind you, they have taken what they can to the packing houses and whatever else to come to Nassau. But you see a ton of tomatoes on the ground that are wasting. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? If we had a proper processing plant, we could process those tomatoes. Not only can we can puree them, we can cut them up, canned tomatoes, there are a number of things we can do with them. But they're sitting on the ground wasting because there's no marketing, there's no facility in place to deal with them. Has to change. Has to change if we want to be successful as farmers. Okay? Has to change. Mr. Speaker, farmers buyers will be brought together by BAIC in forums to further discuss how we can further assist in this promotion. Marketing information systems have been designed and has been implemented. Data is being compiled and distributed weekly for the benefit of farmers, wholesalers, retailers, and consumers. Representatives from major stakeholders include Super Values food stores, Bahamas International Foods, Bahamas Food Services, Continental Food Services, Courtesy Food Market, AML Foods, and Phil's Food Store. Promotions of buying local throughout Nassau via internet, radio, television, and telecommunications. All these things will be undertaken by BAIC and this team. We are serious about marketing farmers. We are serious about moving our agricultural product forward. The only way we can do that if we pair our farmers who are growing product with marketers who are going to get out there and market that product so that they have no wastage, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we'll have promotion of buying local throughout Nassau via internet, radio, television, and telecommunications. Promotion and expansion of the Gladstone Road Farmers Market to a second location on the eastern side of the island. Mr. Speaker, while this is important, we need to look past these small farmers markets if we want to bring farming where we need to bring farming. Mr. Speaker, during this winter season, a special focus will be made on two new markets, two new farmers markets, Mr. Speaker. While they are not our major concentration, they're important so that people, Bahamians, can know what farmers are growing out there. Let's support our farmers. Mr. Speaker, the culinary industry, which includes partnerships with Atlantis Resort and 12 other restaurants and hotels, these restaurants are now starting to purchase local produce through our affiliation with Bahamas International Foods. The landscaping industry, which currently includes partnerships with 6 of the nurseries in Nassau, are also areas that we are moving forward. Mr. Speaker, when I speak about landscaping, we have some resorts that are being built in the Bahamas here with landscaping projects that are in the millions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. And there are not very many local Bahamians who are benefiting from this, because we are allowing, in some cases, these individuals to bring their landscapers into the country, foreign landscaping companies, to do landscaping work that we have talented Bahamians who can do these jobs. Must stop. We need to support ourselves. We need to keep that money, those millions, circulating in our own country. Why are we propping up some other country by bringing their landscapers here when we have tons of landscapers in the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, another area that the school will be concentrating on as well is golf course maintenance. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if the member for Golden Gates can tell me, but I am certain that anyone who manages a golf course probably makes over $100,000 a year, or more, much more, Mr. Speaker, and I was being conservative. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, Mr. Speaker, that we are allowing to slip through because we do not have the people in place, trained in place to do those jobs, Mr. Speaker. All right? So, Mr. Speaker, what we need to do, we need to support this institution. We need to support these institutions so that we can train our people to take these jobs. Mr. Speaker, strengthening the Farmers Association. The Agriculture Division works closely with the Business Advisory Division and Accounts Department of the corporation in seeking to assist in the formation and the strengthening capacity of farmers associations. As of 2012, several farmers associations have been formed and legally registered in North Andros, South Andros, Exuma, North and South Abaco. Groupings of farmers which are being looked at for assistance this year are North, Central, and South Elutra, Babco and Nassau, Cat Island, and Maguana. All of these groups are at varying stages in their development and requires our continued assistance in capacity building and grant assistance to help them become stronger organizations. Fruit tree programs. Mr. Speaker, BAIC is partnering with the Ministry of Housing on their new housing project that's coming on stream. Efforts are being made to partner with the Ministry of Housing in this unique initiative. This effort is to have contractors include in their house packages 4 or 5 native fruit trees: sugar apples, Persian limes, guavas, or sourshops. Mr. Speaker, we tend to, and Mr. Speaker, in a sense, a lot of us are guilty of this. We build these houses, these lovely houses, and we don't have anything in the yard that we can eat. We have croton there. You eat croton, I guarantee you will die. We have nothing in the yard, in our yards, that we can eat. When I was growing up as a boy, we had plum trees and whatever else in our yard. Small, but we had those in our yard. We had fruit trees in our yard. Today, no one. Everyone is after that look. They're not after trying to advance or familiarize themselves or their children with Bahamian fruit trees. Mr. Speaker, we will partner with the Ministry of Housing to make this a reality. Mr. Speaker, this effort is to, as mentioned, is to have contractors include at least 4 or 5 native fruit trees in any housing package that they sell. This will assist those persons propagating fruit trees as well as the new homeowners. So we want each new homeowner, as we get into our building phase, to have some Bahamian fruit trees in their yard. Tissue cultivators were imported from the U.S. and matured at Lucayan Tropical, Nassau, Bahamas. This project would be continued especially in light of the recent hurricane, which caused so much banana and plant devastation. It introduces a new, clean, virus-free material for distribution in Nassau, Grand Bahama, Abaco, North Andros, Eleuthera, Long Island, Cat Island, Exuma, and the southeastern islands. Propagation unit at the Agricultural Park in North Andros. This unit will generate an assortment of fruit trees as well as coordinate the collection of materials from farmers who are propagating some of these plant materials. Procurement of agricultural supplies. Mr. Speaker, BAIC has assisted a number of all-age elementary and or high schools with an assortment of input supplies throughout the country. This project is proposed to continue in Bullocks Harbor and the Berry Islands, Government High School, North Andros High School, Abrahams Bay High School as well. food processing. The agro-food processing unit continues to work on a number of training projects throughout the country. The unit works closely with a number of food processing source agencies, such as CAPALAB, IECA, Scientific Research Council, and Southern Fruit and Food Processors Limited. These agencies bring expertise, training, and knowledge to the food processing unit. In particular, and to many Bahamians in general, this area will become very important. Mr. Speaker, the corporation has created a unit with the specific mandate of expanding opportunities for Bahamians in the light industry sector, inclusive of solar. This unit will act as a catalyst in assisting Bahamians in identifying and/or expanding opportunities in this sector. The initial results of this new unit, are very encouraging, especially with respect to job creation. A part of this will see some 50 Bahamians trained as elevator technicians over the next few years. And this, Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of this project. It is something that will be carried out in the Bahamas. And the top 15 students in this project, which we are doing in conjunction with the Bahamas BTVI, will get jobs at one or two of the elevator companies or hotels in the country. Mr. Speaker, training, retraining, business advice, and assistance are crucial to any business, especially small and medium-sized entities. Relative to SAM, the corporation continues to provide relevant training, advice, and assistance, inclusive of seminars, business plans, information technology, and marketing. Mr. Speaker, on the occasion of the official opening of the Agro Expo on 7th of March 2013, the Right Honourable Member for Centerville gave the opening address. A number of points were noted by the Prime Minister for immediate action by both the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources, and Local Government and BAIC.
Honourable members, just quiet it down.
The same is inclusive of the following: need to do more to keep dollars in the Bahamas, need for permanent site for Expo and to bring tourists, sponge conversion to a finished product, construction of studios, especially for young people with talents, mining of shells, land for agriculture, queen counts for cameo brooches. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that the Ministry and BAIC have commenced joint deliberations on these matters with the view of making them a reality. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I hereby advise that I am firmly resolved in moving the corporation to the next level and making it a Bahamian institution that all Bahamians can be proud of. Mr. Speaker, on a fact-finding trip to Jamaica, Mr. Speaker, and looking at their product, what they're doing with agriculture, Mr. Speaker, I was almost taken aback, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica spends $37 million every year, and that's US dollars, on agriculture and the expansion of their agricultural product and agriculture itself. Mr. Speaker, they have formed a number of entities that protect certain aspects of agriculture in their country, Mr. Speaker. There's a coffee industry board, there's a cacao board, there's a coconut board, there's a sugar board, there's a pimento board, there's an allspice board, Mr. Speaker, just to name a few, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what they're doing is this: they're protecting their farmers. They're protecting them through these boards. And all of this money that they spend go to support these institutions so that, listen, when there's a problem, they have the resources in place to protect their farmers. Mr. Speaker, we have to look at these institutions and implementing them in our country. It's very important. If we are serious about farming, if we are serious about feeding ourselves, so again, there's a lot of lip service about it, but if we are serious about this, Mr. Speaker, we need to stop the lip service, and we need to put our money where our mouths are. It is important not only for us. We may not see it in our lifetime. where we not have food on the shelves. But if we stay on this trend, Mr. Speaker, I guarantee you that our children or their children will see those days if we don't do something about it. And we live in a time, Mr. Speaker, I don't understand it, where we have the most vicious hurricanes, and we are right in Hurricane Alley, Mr. Speaker. South Florida is right in Hurricane Alley. If we do not do something, Mr. Speaker, one of these days, God forbid, Florida will be hit in such a way that we cannot get our food, because they're going to concentrate on themselves first. Mr. Speaker, we need to take this very seriously. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would say that I believe, and this is just my personal belief, this is not any policy, Mr. Speaker. I believe that after education, which is number one, national security, number two, I believe that agriculture should be right up there with the big three. Mr. Speaker, I say that now. I think we need to relook at our agricultural policy. And I must say, you know what? The member for Centerville is doing his utmost. Mr. Speaker, for years, we had no movement as far as anything concrete in the sector of agriculture. We are now laying that foundation. It's important. It is important that we follow up on this. It is important that we do it right, so that those who come behind us, we usually have some vindictive people who come behind us when the Bahamian people decide that they're going to change this. And they will cut off their nose to spite their faces. Understand me? We need to put this institution in place. We need to put this institution in place in such a way that it cannot be uprooted from the Bahamian landscape. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your time. God bless the Commonwealth of Bahamas.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Golden Gates.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to be in this honorable place once again, representing the wonderful constituents from the great constituency of Golden Gates. Mr. Speaker, I'm always intrigued when I listen to members from the side opposite who convince themselves before coming into this place that something is so, and then they try to convince the public of the same thing. It is almost like they're living in one world and everybody else living in another world. But I guess one of these days before 2017, the reality would set in, and they would really recognize why it is that they're over there and we're over here. Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity, a police officer called me the other day, and he said to me, Minister, did you know that the opposition now have a place on the Police Staff Association? I said, no, you joke, that's not so. He said, yeah, I saw the leader of the opposition attend a meeting the other day, and he appeared to be a part of the association. I said, no, man, he's not a part of the association. He wouldn't be attending your meeting because he's not a part of the association. But they insisted. And so I said, maybe they may have amended the Articles of Association in my absence and made the leader of the opposition a part of the Police Staff Association. Then they reminded me, and listen here, don't forget now, the president of the Police Staff Association is the used-to-be member of Parliament for Garden Hills, the wannabe member of Parliament now. It's his brother, Mr. Rule. And so then they put two and two together and said, listen, I understand now. He is not a part of the association, just that the defeated member of Garden Hills, who is now his brother, who is now the president of the Staff Association, just takes liberties in inviting him to Police Staff Association meetings. But I spoke to one of the members who said he was very offended by the presence, but he said nonetheless he was invited by the president, so he accepted for what it is. But I had a time trying to convince him initially that no.
You need to defend yourself, sir. Don't sit there. Defend yourself.
No, he wouldn't do that. No, he has nothing to defend. No, you can't defend against the truth.
I wanted to.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased. Or maybe it was a hologram. Maybe it really wasn't him. Maybe it was a hologram. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to represent to this House in this House to address the 2013-2014 budget, which is a progressive Liberal Party budget designed to securing the future of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, just before I get into my substantive contribution, and since this will probably be the last time before I speak before Father's Day, I want to really take this opportunity to wish all fathers in the country a happy Father's Day, and of course, particularly those fathers of Golden Gates, and fathers to my left and to my right.
You're telling the country news.
Mr. Speaker,
Telling the country news back.
and then I want to thank Mr. Speaker, the persons in Golden Gates who consistently helped me to represent the constituents in Golden Gates. We began giving out our Father's Day treats last week, and I think we had 14 polling divisions to complete, and we completed the last one last night. And so we want to thank all of those persons who participated, and they helped me year after year in representing the wonderful constituents in Golden Gates. We gave each one of them a special gift, Mr. Speaker. I hope before the end of my presentation, somebody will come and share with you what I gave to all of the fathers in Golden Gates. No, that's what I'm saying. It's on the way. It's on the way. It'll be here before Father's Day. Mr. Speaker, this 2013-2014 budget represents the first time since the Progressive Liberal Party won the election that has been fully prepared by the Christie administration, reflecting the values and policy trust articulated in the 2012 Charter for Governance. This 2013-2014 budget, Mr. Speaker, as I said, is about securing the future of our country. Because upon winning the general election on May 7, 2012, we inherited 2012-2013 budget fashioned by the outgoing government against the backdrop of fiscal mismanagement, high budget deficits, and escalating debt burdens. Mr. Speaker, the state of public finances was in a virtual mess, marked by declining revenue and runaway expenses. It was, Mr. Speaker, a recipe for disaster. And the Progressive Liberal Party government had very little time, if any, to refocus the 2012-2013 budget, since we had less than 3 weeks to review and present it to this Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I propose to illustrate for this Honorable House and the Bahamian people the gravamen of the F&M's government's mismanagement of our public finances during the past 5 years. Mr. Speaker, their fiscal performance shows that from 2007 through 2012, that the growth in expenditure has outstripped the growth in revenue every single year. Indeed, the F&M government's budget performance got progressively worse year after year. For instance, at the beginning of the F&M's administration, its budgetary deficit stood at approximately $151 million. However, during fiscal period 2008-2009, the F&M budget deficit increased by some $210 million to a whopping $361.3 million. And that's from $151 million in 2007-2008. And that, Mr. Speaker, represented an increase of some 140%. Mr. Speaker, the F&M's trend of poorly managing the public's finances and running huge budget deficits continued through 2009-2010. The government recording a budget deficit of some $339.5 million. While this budget deficit showed a slight reduction when compared to 2008-2009, the deficit nonetheless represented an increase of $158 million, or 105% compared to the 2007-2008 budget deficit. Mr. Speaker, similarly, the F&M government budget deficit soared from $151 million in 2007-2008 to to $370 million in 2010-2011, representing an increase over that period of some $219.7 million. Mr. Speaker, when you compare that to 2007-2008 to 2010-2011, it represented some 145% increase. Finally, Mr. Speaker, in 2011-2012, the F&M government recorded its highest budget deficit ever in the amount of some $450 million, representing an increase of approximately $300 million, or 200%, Mr. Speaker, over the 2007-2008 budget deficit. Now, what this clearly illustrates is that the F&M government, through its poor fiscal management, coupled with excessive spending and high borrowings, consistently incurred increasing deficits year after year. And to further exacerbate its poor mismanagement of the public finances, the level of the national debt grew similarly, Mr. Speaker, year after year. For instance, and Mr. Speaker, these figures are important because when I listened to the member from St. Anne's when he spoke, he's saying to give the impression that it was the PLP's doings that caused us to have to borrow this money to pay off debt that they left in place. When if he wanted to really not be charged with sins of omission, he would give us all the facts and first say, listen here, it was us who caused this, and we put it on the PLP. That's why they're in the position at the end of the day. But of course, Mr. Speaker, he is one of the few over there, a couple of them, who would give you the facts as they are, and the rest of them, Mr. Speaker, would usually play with smoke and mirror. I always talk about the smoke and mirror previous administration from member side opposite.
Members.
Not just on the smoke and mirror. Mr. Speaker, for instance, in 2007, when we talk about the national debt, the national debt stood at some $3 billion. However, in 2008, the national debt climbed by $143 million to $3.2 billion, representing an increase of 5%. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, in 2009, the national debt widened by $839 million to $3.9 billion, which represents an increase of some 27%. Mr. Speaker, the year 2010 was no different. The F&M's government excessive spending and borrowings led to the national debt soaring by some $1.2 billion, $1.2 billion to $4.284 billion, representing, Mr. Speaker, an increase of some 40%. Mr. Speaker, what we see is a consistent pattern of the F&M government running high budget deficits, accompanied, Mr. Speaker, by rising national debt, which is no way to manage public finances and the Bahamian people's money. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if it was their own money, if they would be spending it the same way. The F&M government was spending as if it had a bottomless pit of money, or as if they had money popping out of the ground. What a time and what a party, all, Mr. Speaker, at the people's expense, when in other parts of the world, governments were implementing austerity measures. At the same time, the national debt to GDP ratio was also increasing. In fact, during the 5-year period under review, the debt to GDP ratio grew from 39% to 61.2%, representing an increase of some 22.2%, or increasing, Mr. Speaker, by some 22.2%, or increasing by some 57%, Mr. Speaker. 57% increase from 39 to 61.2%. This pattern of increasing budget deficits and increasing debt to GDP ratio year after year left the PLP administration with nothing but outstanding unpaid bills to settle, Mr. Speaker, from day one. And Mr. Speaker, you heard them themselves. You know, we said we were ready to govern from day one. We didn't say anything but cleaning up their mess. And they themselves decided the mess was so bad, they now wanted to boss themselves away from it. So they're saying, listen, you take everything. We created the mess, you just take it and you clean it up. Yeah, we can clean it up, but it takes time to clean it up, Mr. Speaker. We are governing from day one, Mr. Speaker. We will fix it, but the mess that they left us in. See, when we left office, we left in a position that the first year they announced that they were going to have a surplus of $25 million. That's the kind of economy we left for them. But in their case, Mr. Speaker, they left us in such a mess. We were ready to govern, but we couldn't clean the mess because it was just too much. Mr. Speaker, the newly elected PLP government had no other choice but to borrow to pay off the outstanding unpaid debts left behind by the Free National Movement administration. It also placed the country in the unfortunate position of being downgraded by international rating agencies, all at their pleasure, Mr. Speaker. And they seem to be so proud of it. You listen to them and listen to their comments as they said. They seem to be proud of this dilapidated position that they left this country in. They should be hanging their heads in shame and asking forgiveness from the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, no right-thinking government could ever be proud of such poor record of economic management of the Bahamian economy. These statistics are not my statistics, Mr. Speaker. These are the central bank statistics. And these are readily accessible by all and sundry. Mr. Speaker, you would recall that at the outset of my remarks, I stated that this PLP 2013-2014 budget is designed to securing our future. We will be securing our future by reducing budget deficits and strengthening public finances, thereby returning the economy to steady growth and private sector job creation. Our goal for securing our future is amply reflected in our plan to reduce the GSF deficit from 6.1% in 2012-2013 to 5.1% in 2013-2014. It is also reflected in the fiscal objectives of the PLP government's medium-term plan, Mr. Speaker, to 1, eradicate by 2015-2016 both the deficit on recurrent account and the GFS deficit. 2, eliminate the primary deficit by 2014-2015, which is critical to reversing the upward trend in the debt-to-GDP ratio. And 3, returning government's debt to level at a rate of 50% of GDP by 2016-2017, as opposed to a level approaching, Mr. Speaker, the level that we met, Mr. Speaker, approaching some 70% in the absence of our decisive plan to redress the public finances. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that as members' officers sit and listen and they see what we're about to do, that they are really doubtful that we can do it. When they look at the way they mismanage the economy, they just figure that's the way it should be. It's like the man who never saw an indoor toilet before, and you try to introduce him to one. He said, oh, no, I don't want to use it, I'm going outside. As far as they're concerned, it can't happen. It cannot happen, Mr. Speaker. So I don't expect any more from them. I expect them to say exactly what they're saying right now. They had a leader who could not deliver. We had to have a leader who delivered before, and he will deliver again. Coupled with restoring order to the management of public finances, Mr. Speaker, securing our future requires that we grow the economy and put the Bahamian people back to work through job creation. This initiative is reflected in the government's capital development plan to fulfill objectives of job creations. Last time we were in office, we created over 22,000 jobs, Mr. Speaker, and we will do it again. We will do it again. For example, Mr. Speaker, if they listened carefully, they would have heard that the government has allocated $10 million in 2013-2014 budget to marketing the new Bahamas resort development in Cable Beach. The government has allocated $10 million to the capital budget of the Ministry of Works and Urban Development for urban renewal small home repair. The government has allocated $5.5 million to the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology for the construction of new primary and secondary schools in Anagua, San Salvador, Gregorytown, and Low Sound. Further, the government will invest some $10 million in the construction of multi-purpose sporting facilities in the Family Islands. The government has allocated $1 million towards the installation of greenhouses for gardening purpose in various facilities throughout the Bahamas. The government will rent and renovate Our Lady's Primary School to accommodate some 100 special needs children. The government has committed to the construction of many hospitals across the Bahamas, and 2 such hospitals are on the drawing board for South Eleuthera and Canada Island, and construction is scheduled to commence during this period, 2013-2014. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the government will invest some $4 million to establish a new school of agriculture and marine science in North Andros, in 2014, 2015. And the government would allocate $1 million to mark the start of the Bahamian Carnival and Mardi Gras in 2014, 2015, Mr. Speaker. We are talking about real ways of stimulating the economy. We're not talking about building roads and people ain't got no cars to drive on them. We're not talking about building roads and people can't pay the electricity bill. We will be creating real jobs, not jobs for Jose Cataloni and all these foreigners. We're not creating jobs, and we are creating, Mr. Speaker, jobs, sustainable jobs for Bahamians. These are, Mr. Speaker, but a few of the key capital development initiatives the PLP government, led by the Right Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie, plans to implement to stimulate economic growth and create job opportunities for Bahamians in the years ahead, designed to securing our future. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the Ministry of Labor and National Insurance, which currently comprises the Department of Labor, Consumer Welfare, the National Insurance Board, the Bridge Authority, and the Standards Bureau, along with the National Training Agency. Of course, the National Training Agency will be officially added to my portfolio as soon as we complete the legislation, which is now tabled before this House and just waiting on second reading. Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas, under the leadership of the Right Honorable Perry G. Christie, has committed itself to establishment of the National Training Agency. The Secretariat of the National Training Agency and its classrooms will be located on the corner of Gladstone Road and Munnings Road. And the National Training Agency will be headed by our consultant, Ms. Agatha Marcel, who is here with us today. And of course, she'll be appointed very shortly as director as soon as we pass appropriate legislation. The Right Honorable Perry G. Christie, Prime Minister and Minister, is expected, Mr. Speaker, he's expected to officially open the Secretariat on Friday, the 28th of June of this year. So on the 20th of this month, the Prime Minister will officially open the Secretariat. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is real things we're talking about. When we left office in 2007, we had already begun the process of establishing a National Training Agency. Of course, because of the short-sightedness of the previous administration, immediately upon assuming office in 2007, they scrapped the plan. And if we hadn't scrapped it, we would have been so much further ahead in trying to secure sustainable employment for individuals here in the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, the National Training Agency will aggressively address the challenge of preparing young adults, in particular those 25 and under, who make up 32% of unemployed persons, for successful entry into the workforce. This, Mr. Speaker, is of critical importance to the growth and development of a dynamic and productive workforce that will be able to keep pace with a progressive and expanding economy, as is evidenced by the development projects that the 2013-2014 budget foreshadows. Mr. Speaker, it is useless for us to continue to have all of these major developments on the drawing boards and not have Bahamians properly trained to take advantage of all of these opportunities. And the fact that the national unemployment rate is still over 13%, and the youth employment rate is over 27%, based on a 2011 labor force survey conducted by IDB, has propelled the government to take positive action to address this issue. Our focus is on training of persons under 25 who make up 32% of unemployed persons. However, Mr. Speaker, this does not preclude other groups from being beneficiaries of the government's actions to establish the National Training Agency. The National Training Agency will be established as a competency-based training and job placement system that is flexible and responsive to the actual requirements of the workforce via a network of suitable training institutions, organizations, and programs involved in the process of supplying qualified and skilled labor for the country. And so, Mr. Speaker, it is very important for us, when we train our workforce, to train them in areas that are relevant. You know, there's no use training them in one area, and you have other developments going on in the country, and we're losing pace. And so what we did, Mr. Speaker, is consultant met with many of the employers, many of the developers, and so the program you see us designing is designed specifically knowing what their needs are in the country at this time and years to come. Mr. Speaker, the agency training system is designed to develop and improve employable skills and competencies to transform undesirable attitudes and behaviors towards work, to reduce functional and numerical literacy, to encourage and increase civic pride, to lower the high levels of unemployment, especially among youth and young adults, and positively influence the reduction of crime. Mr. Speaker, I believe that there's a direct correlation between unemployment and crime. And so the more positive things, the more jobs we could create, the more we can give young people to do, I think the less they'll be apt to get involved in these criminal activities. Mr. Speaker, the training system also harmonizes the relationship between institutional and in-plant training subsystems and facilitates the goal of producing and maintaining a well-trained and skilled workforce. In establishing this entity, Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas recognizes the importance of the entity being stakeholder-driven. It is important that this entity is stakeholder-driven, given that it must facilitate cooperation between employers and employees' organizations, businesses, communities, training institutions and program, trainees, Urban Renewal 2.0, and the government. Mr. Speaker, the National Training Agency functions will include, 1, providing leadership and structure for the development of an industry-standardized competency-based training. 2, providing the organized framework for the delivery of industry-based competency training. 3, facilitating workforce readiness. And 4, expanding the opportunity for increased job placement. Mr. Speaker, the successful administration of the agency's function will facilitate the realization of some critical national training objectives, which include increasing the capacity of individuals to participate in the workforce, promoting, identifying, and developing industry standards of occupations and training programs, providing a national certification framework, Mr. Speaker, increasing the number of persons pursuing technical and vocational education and training, and the quality, Mr. Speaker, of the training is important, providing professional counseling and career guidance, providing a central registration unit, and providing referral and placement services, providing, Mr. Speaker, competency-based statistical data and information to government and relevant agencies, and developing a tracking and monitoring system, promoting and encouraging national awareness, Mr. Speaker. The National Training Agency will be the catalyst, Mr. Speaker, that provides uniformity, standardization, accreditation, assessment, and certification in the delivery of competency-based training with a view of promoting and ensuring individual and workforce excellence. Mr. Speaker, the National Training Agency will commence its training function with the introduction of several pilot programs, which will run an average of 10 weeks each. These programs will be in the industry areas of, and these are just the pilot ones we will run initially before we expand to other areas. But initially, we will have them in hospitality and tourism, in retail operation and sales, in auto service and care, and in office procedures. And these areas signal the greatest potential for employment growth in the short term. The criteria for acceptance of a trainee to a training program are critical, Mr. Speaker. The criteria is critical, and all registrants must, Mr. Speaker, must participate in a 4 weeks, 3 half-days per week, mandatory workforce preparatory behavioral transformation program. That's important. And the consultant placed emphasis on that. They must, before you can get into the main program, you must participate in a 4-week, 3 half-days per week, mandatory workforce preparatory behavioral transformation program. And so the idea is if you cannot commit yourself to those 4 weeks, it'll be unlikely that you could commit yourself to the long-term program that we want to put you into. And so this program substitutes for the academic certificates because many school graduates and others don't have them, Mr. Speaker. This mandatory program for all registrants will provide an indicator of the commitment, discipline, and interest that registrants have in self-improvement and development. Mr. Speaker, if you listen to this program carefully, BTVI will be one of the providers of the service of the program. This program will provide those services. We have many institutions that we will accredit, of which BTVI is. As I go into my presentation, you'll get more, understand more what the program is all about. But we won't be providing those technical training, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if they're not willing and can't do 12 half days, they will not be able to do 10 weeks in a program. It is anticipated, Mr. Speaker, that these pilot programs, which will be launched by mid-July, that's mid-next month, will accommodate approximately 625 trainees in Nassau in the 4 programs, with 400 of these slated for hospitality tourism, 250 in Freeport, 95 in Abaco, 80 in Exuma initially. And of course, the program will be extended to all of the Family Islands as well. But this is these are the islands that we will initially have the programs in, just as a pilot program. These trainees are slated to graduate from the National Training Agency by the end of November or the first week in December of this year. Mr. Speaker, the National Training Agency could not have come at a more opportune time in the economic growth and development of our country. Recently, we have heard and read about concerns from various sectors of our economy regarding the perceived challenges that employers will face in the near future, because they feel as though they will be unable to find Bahamians who are educated enough and skilled enough to fill certain jobs. Even service jobs that will come on stream beginning in Bimini in July 2013, in Grand Mama at the end of 2013, and in New Providence at the end of 2014. So all these areas, Mr. Speaker, Grand Bahama, Bimini, Nassau, feel as though they will not be able to find properly skilled or trained individuals, semi-skilled or unskilled workers, to take advantage of this opportunity. And that is why it is so timely for the National Training Agency to come on stream now. As you know, Bahamas slated to hire some 4,500 people by the end of next year. But be assured that there's no need to panic, and there will be no employment crisis. As we have thousands of young adults who have completed formal schooling, and even though, Mr. Speaker, all may not have achieved notable academic standing, there are many of them who can and will be, Mr. Speaker, and will be prepared by the National Training Agency for the workforce. And I understand, like I say, I hear the snickering and the doubts that they have on the other side. But you know, as the member for Michael said, the pie is there. Oh, taste and see. You know, the pie is there. All you got to do is take a taste. The proof is in the eating, and the pie is there already. Indeed, after launch of its pilot programs in mid-July 2013, this agency is expected to graduate approximately 3,000 to 4,000 trainees when fully established annually. So annually, Mr. Speaker, we are looking at graduating some 3,000 to 4,000 trainees. With annual graduations projected in this amount, the agency will be in a strong position to produce Bahamians with the necessary practical competencies and skills to meet the current and future demands of Bahama, which is projecting, as I said, some 4,500 positions by December 2013. Also, Bimini Resort World, they're looking at some 500 positions between the resort and the casino. And for 2013-2014, and then, Mr. Speaker, you have the Reef Resort, where they're projecting some 400 positions by November of this year. And we met with Curzon after we saw the release a couple of months ago, and they're looking at having recruiting some 300 to 400 persons on a regular basis on recurring replacement jobs. They're not new jobs, but basically jobs that persons are being replaced. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that the National Training Agency has already identified additional classroom space in the Department of Labor's Employment Service Center located on Robertson Road, capable of accommodating some 30 trainees. Classroom space has also been identified in the National Insurance Board complex in Freeport, and efforts are underway to identify classroom space in government buildings in Abaco and Exuma. In January 2014, the National Training Agency will add more programs to its curriculum, such as domestic services, landscape maintenance, residential and commercial buildings, and allied health care services. These skills programs will be instructed by certified industry providers, and all skills and training will be certified, Mr. Speaker. This is important. All skills and training, Mr. Speaker, will be certified by city and guilds. Additionally, discussions are being held with the president of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute to work a process and terms of referral to BTVI. That's what's announced. Further, Mr. Speaker, commencing in January 2014, it is anticipated that the number of trainees will range between 2,000 and 2,500. The National Training Agency will begin with entry levels 1 and 2, and persons at level 3 and above will be required to pay a fee. I should point out that levels 1 and 2 will comprise of trainees who are semi-skilled, while level 3 and 4 will be skilled, and level 5 to 7 will be supervisory management levels, Mr. Speaker. The National Training Agency will also establish a vocational institute for professional and convention center. Mr. Speaker, an individual does not need an academic degree to become an excellent server, become Gulf maintenance or engineering person. Neither does the individual need a degree to become an office clerk, kitchen steward, food preparation, or landscape maintenance person. What we need, Mr. Speaker, are desirable attributes, competencies, and skills. And we can all acknowledge and agree that there are some positions that require degrees, and there are some where degrees are desirable. However, the majority of work in a predominantly service economy do not require college or university degrees for service and support positions. The majority of them do not require a college or university degree, and that's for the service support positions. To suggest that a resort or any other similar organization would be hard-pressed to fill such jobs because Bahamians are not trainable and unemployable, Mr. Speaker, is very unreasonable, and it is very unfortunate that persons would think so. The reputation of the Bahamas as a preferred tourist destination was built, Mr. Speaker, by the smiles, hands, and hard work of ordinary Bahamian people. With the right service attitudes and work behaviors that are necessary for such a destination to remain competitive, Mr. Speaker, and successful. By creating the agency, Mr. Speaker, the government has made an unprecedented commitment to the development of the Bahamian people, especially the youth and the young adults under the age of 25. Of course, who I said that category represents some 32% persons unemployed. The training organized, coordinated, and delivered by the National Training Agency is different from traditional training, which places emphasis on the learning processes. Competency-based training places emphasis on learning outcomes and is comprised, Mr. Speaker, of modules of employable skills broken down into building blocks. Learning outcomes are based on industry standards, and learning progress is based on individual ability and places emphasis on what a person can actually do. Mr. Speaker, the agency and its work will bring about a paradigm shift in how technical vocational education and training is delivered. It will strengthen, Mr. Speaker, and develop relationships between employers and their organizations and the training institutions, providers, and trainees, with the end result being a more productive and service-oriented workforce. The National Training Agency, Mr. Speaker, will create the opportunity for employers to become engaged in the development of our country's human resources by partnering with the agency in its job training schemes, such as apprenticeship and internship programs and other on-the-job training programs. The agency's training providers will also be industry-based business organizations and programs that have been approved, Mr. Speaker, by the National Training Agency Accreditation Committee, comprised of relevant industry professionals and the agency's quality control department. And so, as you can see, we won't be just using organizations, but all of the organizations that we use must be accredited by the National Training Agency. And so even though the National Training Agency does not strictly model other training agencies in the region, it is designed, Mr. Speaker, to suit our current and future needs. It will accomplish the same goal of producing a competency-based skilled workforce that is globally competitive, as all training programs will meet national, regional, and industry standards. Mr. Speaker, This will be accomplished by the agency fostering a beneficial partnership, and I mentioned it before, with City and Guilds, one of the leading vocational education providers globally, with 2 million learners working towards 500 qualifications annually worldwide. So they have over 2 million persons, Mr. Speaker, in this program, working towards over 500 qualifications, and that is the institution that we will be a part of. City and Guilds boasts of over 10,000 centers of training and learning spanning over 80 countries. City and Guilds has supported the capacity building of national training agencies in a number of jurisdictions, including Jamaica and the Bahamas, with the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And we welcome their knowledge and expertise in assisting the Bahamas workforce in becoming globally competitive via the avenue of certification that is globally recognized and accepted, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the Department of Labor. As outlined before in this Honorable House, the Department is multifaceted. We have succeeded in our quest to secure an additional facility located on Robertson Road, and Mr. Speaker, within a matter of weeks, we should be fully functional, providing to the surrounding communities all services with the exception of conciliation and mediation. However, we will put in place a process to register disputes and complaints and pass them on to the central office. Mr. Speaker, this is very important because for too long we've been centralized basically in one location in Nassau. And as I said before, the idea now is to take the service to the people. So the first center that we are opening would be on Robertson Road, the old Common Building Supply Building. Of course, as I said before, we'll also be opening an office in the Foxville area. We're trying to identify space now, and also one in the Carmichael area. Mr. Speaker, additionally, my ministry has established the necessary linkages between the Public Employment Services and the National Training Agency, and space has been identified in this facility for specialized courses to be conducted to train and equip our people, thus enhancing, Mr. Speaker, their employability. Mr. Speaker, during the period January to May 2013, the Employment Exchange of the Department of Labor registered some 1,792 registrants, 1,792 new registrants, 802 of which were male registrants, and 990 were female. 966 registrants were referred for employment, and out of that 966, approximately 262 were placed, and that's according to the feedback that we got from individuals. It is anticipated that the interagency collaboration between the Public Employment Service and the National Training Agency will increase the number of registrants placed, as our people would have acquired the necessary skills and training compatible with the vacancy. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to inform this Honorable House that my ministry has received a commitment for a grant to facilitate a technical cooperation mission involving 5 officers of the Public Employment Services, inclusive of an officer from the National Training Agency, from the Inter-American Development Bank. And this mission will travel, Mr. Speaker, to Honduras in September of this year, joined by their counterparts from Jamaica, along with representatives from the Jamaican and Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, to examine, Mr. Speaker, a special model of public-private cooperation between the Honduran Ministry of Labor and the Honduran Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Speaker, the Honduran model is recognized as one of the best in the region in terms of the level of success, placing applicants into jobs. You'd also know, Mr. Speaker, you'd also be pleased to note that additional discussions with IDB has resulted in their also proposing a mission to Trinidad to closely examine the Trinidadian Ministry of Labor small, micro, and medium enterprise development initiatives. These missions, Mr. Speaker, will expose our officers to the best and the latest techniques and methodology, all in an effort to improve and enhance the service we are called on to provide to those who need it the most. We, therefore, would like to thank, Mr. Speaker, the IDB for its assistance and look forward to a successful mission. Mr. Speaker, we have also talked about the reestablishment of our one-stop centers. And last week, a team of officers from our Public Employment Division met with officers from the Department of Information Technology and executives of Atlantis. And as a result of the meeting, Atlantis has renewed its commitment to working hand in hand with the department to seek to have as many Bahamians as possible fill vacancies which exist now and in the future. Atlantis, Mr. Speaker, has identified key human resources personnel who will be working with officers from the department to enhance the ability for Bahamians to register for jobs online at our one-stop centers. And Mr. Speaker, the idea is that we now have an employment exchange and a database which houses all of the vacancies that exist that we are notified of, and also houses all of the individuals looking for employment. And for a long time now, many Bahamians were not taking advantage of that. And so we met with Atlantis and tried to get them to use a system that would upload their vacancies on our website at the Department of Labor at the same time they upload it on their website for persons who don't know about accessing Atlantis' website. So it gives them an additional means to be notified of job vacancies and also additional means for individuals to post their qualifications and job readiness. I hasten to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, that most of today's applications are completed online, so that by the time of the interview, enough information would have been passed on to the interviewer. This one-stop service centers are a vital part. The one-stop service centers are a vital part of our organization and are very crucial to those individuals that may not have access to computers in their homes. And so even though we'd like to see every home with a computer, Mr. Speaker, the reality is most homes don't have computers. And so the one-stop centers will allow for individuals to actually visit the one-stop centers rather than going into the web shops to use the computers. Mr. Speaker, the center would facilitate these job seekers with creating and printing their resumes, applying online for job vacancies, and faxing and copying their information to prospective employers. During the period of January, Mr. Speaker, to May of 2013, we recorded quite a number of conciliation disputes. There were some, I think, 427 disputes reported to New Providence office of the Department of Labor. And of this amount, approximately 75 have resulted in referrals to the tribunal. And so out of the 427 that was reported, 75 of those were actually referred to the industrial tribunal. However, about 323 disputes have been resolved by conciliators and 29 matters are ongoing. So, Mr. Speaker, as you can see, the conciliators are doing an excellent job in helping to resolve these disputes even before they have to be referred to the industrial tribunal. And so you have 323 resolved, and only 29 matters right now out of that amount is they are ongoing at this time. And this does not account for the hundreds of matters that are addressed and resolved daily by telephone and by hard-working officers of the Department of Labor. This ministry recognizes that it is necessary to upgrade our legislation to reflect the modern-day realities of the world of work. In this regard, as forecasted in our Charter for Governance, I am pleased to report today that in addition to the Pensions Protection Act, we have also completed the tripartite council bill, and it is scheduled to be debated immediately following the 2013-2014 budget debate. In addition, we've completed recent amendments to the Industrial Relations Act, removing the registration of the industrial agreements from the Bahamas Industrial Tribunal and placing them with the Registrar of Trade Unions, Mr. Speaker. The law came into being earlier this year, and already we have registered several industrial agreements. Mr. Speaker, this is very important because for the most part, most of the industrial agreements that existed in the country were not registered because the tribunal, of course, found some, in most cases, what they thought were legal faults with the industrial tribunals. And so sometimes for years, even though the contracts and industrial agreements were being concluded by both parties, they were being held up and being registered. And we thought it was better that they not act as judge, jury, and executioner. And that is why we agreed in this place to transfer the registration to the Registrar of Trade Unions, which has been going pretty smooth so far. Further, this government also recently removed the provision for employers to petition the Honorable Minister for the revocation of trade union recognition. Indeed, we have leveled the playing field to the extent that only workers can determine whether or not a trade union can represent them. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the upgrading of our legislation, I must emphasize the importance of the need for a social safety net for workers in cases of redundancy. And so, Mr. Speaker, We've already initiated a process of looking around in the regions and the countries of similar size to look at how employees are treated, because, you know, we've had many instances where particularly foreign-owned companies would close down in the Bahamas and they would not pay redundancy payment. We've had some instances with Bahamians as well, but we've had more instances with foreign-owned companies who come to the Bahamas, they operate for a while, they close down, and they're unable to pay redundancy payments. So we're trying to look at ways. Yeah, I mean, there were a number of things they were not paying, but all I'm saying is I'm now dealing with labor, right? And it's important for workers to be properly compensated through redundancy compensation whenever they're made redundant. So we're looking at ways to try and see how we can level the playing field with that as well. Mr. Speaker, as far as the Employment Act, I am pleased to inform this House that the necessary draft amendments to the Employment Act are nearing completion. And we have had some very productive discussions with drafters from the Attorney General's office and have finalized the draft amendments to be presented to our social partners, the Cabinet, and thereafter to Parliament. Despite the fact that the government gave a commitment to review the minimum wage, any decision, Mr. Speaker, to increase the nation's minimum wage on the part of the government will take effect only after full and frank discussions with employers and workers' umbrella organizations, as well as civil society and other stakeholders. So we have no intention of moving ahead with increasing minimum wage unless we have full consultation. But I must say that at the end of the day, we all believe that the minimum wage in the Bahamas right now is too low. And the first argument is always, if you increase the minimum wage, you'll put some of us out of business. But I have never heard anybody at any point, no matter how good the economy is doing, say now is the right time to increase the minimum wage. And so we will have full consultation. And after the consultation, we'll determine if and when the minimum wage will be increased. But I'm glad to hear that members opposite support increasing minimum wage. Oh, yeah, no, I'm pleased to hear that. Central Okai and St. Anne's, I'm glad to hear that. Despite the fact that the government gave a commitment to review the minimum wage, any decision, like I said, will only take place after full consultation. Mr. Speaker, as far as health and safety in the workplace, as stated earlier, the regulations to the Safety and Health at Work Act are being finalized by the Attorney General's office, and it is anticipated that these regulations will be completed in short order. Further, my ministry is, in demonstrating of its commitment to occupational safety and health, has taken steps to put in place a proper career path for OSHA-trained health and safety inspectors, and upgrading our inspector division to be headed by an assistant director who will have the day-to-day oversight. It is my intention to have the officer in place at the start of the new fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, I can't overstate how important this is. As you know, we have many developments going on in the country, and for the most part, quite a number of them have very extensive health and safety programs in place. And it is difficult, if not impossible, to walk on some of those job sites without being fully briefed. And I can tell you, I'm impressed with that. I find it happen more with the foreign-owned companies, though, than the Bahamian-owned companies. A lot of Bahamian construction companies, you can just walk on the site without being briefed on health and safety issues. But I noticed, for instance, when we went to NAD, before you could walk onto the site, they take you through a process where they will give you a briefing on health and safety on the job site. And I'd like to see more of our Bahamian contractors do the same thing. You walk on the site, no hard hats, no fluorescent clothing, no steel-toe shoes, people going up on scaffolds, not properly addressed. And so hopefully once we put these regulations in place, we will see less of that. Workplace safety and health, Mr. Speaker, is everyone's business, and improving the health and safety conditions of workers throughout our country requires a new paradigm that promotes preventative strategies aimed at sensitizing and educating our workers and making information widely available. In this regard, my ministry, Mr. Speaker, will be promoting and strengthening increased cooperation at the national level between ourselves and the Ministry of National Security, Fire Prevention, Health, Environment, and Works, as well as businesses, workers' organizations, and other civil society stakeholders. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, with an ever-expanding workforce, the department is in need of additional labor inspectors to effectively carry out its duties, and steps will be taken to acquire additional inspectors very shortly. Mr. Speaker, as with everything else in government, we are not in an ideal position. And so ideally, we require more resources, more employees, but despite not getting them, we learn to do the best with what we have in place. And so even though we need these inspectors, we need additional tools, we need additional supplies, we understand too, because of fiscal constraints, that certain things can be done, and I applaud those public officers who go above and beyond the call of duty, despite not having all of the resources needed to carry their job functions. I should like to take this opportunity to express our appreciation to our colleagues in the U.S. Department of Labor, in conjunction with the Inter-American Conference of Ministers of Labor of the OAS, who have committed, Mr. Speaker, to assist with the training of our labor inspectors. Additionally, discussions are underway with the International Labor Office with respect to the scheduling of a workshop in the Bahamas to accommodate some 30 inspectors from the Department of Labor, the Ministry of Health, the Fire Department, and the Ministry of Works. Mr. Speaker, our labor market information system. One of the key components of a successful labor administration is the existence of a labor market information system which serves to provide quantitative and qualitative information and intelligence on labor market. It assists, Mr. Speaker, ministries of labor by providing key indicators of labor supply and demand evaluation and the impact of government policies. Mr. Speaker, the ILO has finalized the proposed labor market system for the Bahamas, and a technical team of experts headed by Dr. Reynolds Simons, a former permanent secretary and minister of labor for Suriname, actually arrived in town yesterday, and they had a full demonstration of how this labor market information system would work. And I myself didn't have an opportunity to attend, but I was told that it was very informative, and everybody's excited about having a system in place, which will give us all of the real-time data and statistics we need in order to adapt to any changes that we have to in upcoming years. They're working in conjunction with them as well. All of the information system wouldn't be in isolation. It would be in conjunction with what's going on now. But it'll be concentrating more on labor, but working in conjunction with the Department of Statistics. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the National Insurance Board. As Minister, Mr. Speaker, with oversight for the National Insurance Board, I wish to say at the outset that despite the obvious challenges that NIB may have gone through in the news lately, created by the previous minister's lack of oversight, the organization and the two programs it administers remain solid as a rock. That's important because, Mr. Speaker, all that we see NIB going through right now, well, I shouldn't say all, but 99% of what we see NIB going through right now is a direct result because of the lack of oversight by the previous ministers responsible for national insurance. They just allowed some persons in national insurance to run wild and do any and everything they want to do. And I'll get to some of those things, Mr. Speaker. Hopefully I'll have time to get to some of them and some of the abuses that we saw in the system and we identified since coming to office last year, Mr. Speaker. Further, I wish to assure this Honorable House that this government is taking sure and certain steps to ensure that it continues to be true to its vision statement and that it is always recognized as a reliable and sustainable financial support system that consistently delivers on its promises. That was the mandate that NIB was given in 1974 when it opened its doors, and that is the mandate today. The only difference, Mr. Speaker, is when NIB initially opened back in 1974, it really only took care of the core functions of a Social Security net. Today, we have the management and development and investment arm as well as the core functions. And so I'll speak to that a little further, but it's created some slight complications in how the whole process is managed. But of course, I want to congratulate the executives and officers there who are doing a splendid job. And as I said before, NIB started from 1974. It continued to grow positively from then. And there is no one individual who could say that they're responsible. And when you hear an individual, Mr. Speaker, or you hear people try to portray the position that it was one individual who caused NIB to be where they are right now, you know that person must have a slightly warped mind. You have an organization with over 300 employees, and you have one who you want to give credit to for success, who was only there for 2 or 3 years, when you have some employees there, Mr. Speaker, from the time National Insurance opened from 1974. And you tell me this one man came in 2 and 3 years and he did more than all these people did in all these years? Mr. Speaker, we cannot be serious about that. Mr. Speaker, income from the Social Security program over the period 2009-2012 increased from $239 million to $292 million, representing an increase of $53 million. The biggest change was the contributions income, which jumped from $159 million to $209 million, an increase of $43.3 million, or 27%. During this period, NIB implemented several increases relative to contributions as a part of the program to ensure that the level of benefit payments remained relevant to workers. The Speaker, these increases included the increase in contribution rate from a combined 8.8% to a combined 9.8%, which is 1% increase and is very significant. This happened in June 2010. It must be noted that the rate increase was the first for national insurance and only came about as a result of the addition of the unemployment benefit to the benefits package. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the increase that happened during that period, it's all relative. If you didn't have that additional 1%, then then you wouldn't have had the increase that you had. So it wasn't because of any special management skills. It was because of the 1% increase that contributed to most of that increase. Two, Mr. Speaker, the increase in the insurable wage ceiling from $400 per week to $500 per week in January 2011, and the increase in insurable wage ceiling from $500 to $600 per week in July 2012. And so, as you know, as the insurable wage ceiling increased, of course, the contribution will increase. But some persons will want to take credit for that and say, I was responsible for the increase. When, in fact, the insurable wage ceiling by itself and 1% significantly contributed to any increase over that period of time. The continued effort of the compliance unit in ensuring that all employers and self-employed persons pay and pay on time would also have contributed to results achieved. Workers are realizing more and more the value of paying contributions, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the inquiries about the payment of contributions by the employers have provided many opportunities for the board's inspectors to visit employers, and the system will become compliant. NIB will be heightening its compliance effort going forward, and it will also increase its public relations efforts to impress upon employers, self-employed persons, and employees that paying contributions is an opportunity to prepare for retirement and for short-term placement of low income. Mr. Speaker, that's important because I have many, many individuals who come to me on a regular basis who had an opportunity to contribute either through being self-employed or employers who didn't contribute but took contributions out of employees' salaries. And then, of course, at the end of the day, if they get sick, if they get hurt on the job, and then when it's time for pension, they expect to collect a pension, a long-term and short-term benefits without contributing. Now, it's even more serious because you are unable to get a letter of good standing from NIB to take the business license section in order to get your business license. And so for those persons who would not have contributed in the past maybe 10, 15 years, but should have been contributing, find themselves in a difficult position where they cannot get the letters of good standing, which means they cannot get their business license, and they now want to hold you responsible for not giving them their business license when if they had made their contributions, it wouldn't be an issue. And so I want to encourage all persons, self-employed particularly, and employers to please make contributions so that when the time comes and you have to receive your benefits or whatever, letter of good standing, you can easily receive it from the National Insurance Board. In a few weeks, Mr. Speaker, I will be laying before this Honorable House, the 2012 annual report of the National Insurance Fund. I wish to assure members that the fund is very strong, and in 2012, as has been the case for every year since 1974, there was a surplus. Contrary to what some reports may have suggested, the National Insurance Fund has never, ever experienced a deficit. And Mr. Speaker, I have to say this again. The plan was designed back in 1974. The amount of money they charged for contributions, they knew at that time that it wasn't sufficient to carry the fund. But if they had charged the kind of contribution, or levied the kind of contributions that was required in order to carry the fund in the long term, most persons wouldn't be able to afford to pay it. Fortunately, the government of the day saw the benefits in having this investment arm. And so when you look at the surplus that's created every year, the surplus is not created through the collection of contributions, but the surplus is created because of the investments that national insurance make from time to time. Mr. Speaker, NIB is implementing measures to make its service providers via its local offices more accessible to customers no matter where they live. For example, NIB is in the process of opening a new satellite office in the Carmichael Road area, where there's been tremendous population growth in recent years. NIB's medical benefits branch continue to provide funding for construction, equipping and furnishing of health facilities, and for the National Prescription Drug Plan. And almost 21,000 persons are currently enrolled in the drug plan. In 2012, $7.4 million was incurred in costs, which is approximately 35% of NIB's insurable wages. When all workers become eligible to participate in the drug plan, a contribution rate of 1% shared equally by employer and employees would be charged. Mr. Speaker, and I can tell you this is a concern for us at this time. I think we were spending somewhere between $7 and $9 billion annually on this plan right now, but the money's not being replenished. These are the same funds you use to construct the healthcare facilities and to upkeep all of the clinics and everything else. And so unless we find a way to put that money back inside there, in the next couple of years, if we continue to spend all this money on the drug plan and not have it replenished, then of course we run into a serious difficulty. And so hopefully we will have that problem addressed pretty soon. I think it's supposed to be addressed through the introduction of the national health insurance. But right now there's a concern because millions of dollars is being spent and the monies are not being replaced right now in that fund, in the medical branch section of NIB. In the recent announcement by the Minister of Health that a system of national health insurance will be implemented soon could impact the timing of any decision to expand the drug plan to all workers. NIB will work closely.
Member for Golden Gates, if you kindly yield. The member for Long Island rises on a point of order.
Thank you very much. This is a major concern to me, and I rise really just to ask through you of the Minister for National Insurance with regards to what he just said about the replenishment of the fund that is being used both for health facilities and for the National Prescription Drug Plan. I would like to know if he has any empirical data supplied by an actuarial study to back that up. And if not, do we have an actuarial scientist on staff at this point to ensure that those figures that you're suggesting are actually going to pan out in that way? I'm just interested.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Member for Golden Gates, we continue.
Fortunately for ministers, we don't have the luxury of just speaking off the top of our head. We have to come with factual information, and this information was received directly from the actuary, Mr. Derek Osborne. I think he's been actuary at National Insurance now for more than 10 years. He's still there in office? He's still in office now, yeah.
Okay, just checking.
So he is in office, and these figures, so I'm saying ministers don't have the luxury of just standing up and saying whatever they feel like saying. We have to come with factual information. So this information came direct. As a matter of fact, Derek Osborne, from his mouth to my ear, told me this, and then I had him put it in writing as well. And so this is not something I'm just pulling out of the air, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, NIB has been very aggressive in the collection of contributions. In fact, as at the end of April 2013, collections totaled some $77.7 million, or 4% above projected collections. Also, in recent months, the board has taken a zero tolerance on the late payment of contributions. This is important, Mr. Speaker. Consequently, all contributions paid after the due dates are now assessed for interest in accordance with the Act. All contributions paid after the due date are assessed in interest in accordance with the Act. This is not something we just decided to do. This is a part of the Act that's always in place but not being enforced. And so if you don't want to pay that interest, then I suggest that you pay on time. Once you don't pay on time, there's no calling anybody and saying, listen, man, I was late a day, 2 days, a month, 2 months, and I want you to waive the interest. No, the interest cannot be waived. Once the interest is placed on the account, you must pay it. So I want to encourage all persons who pay NIB contributions not only to pay them, but also to pay it on time. Percentage of. I'll get to that. In addition, efforts are being made to sensitize the hospitality employers and employees about the impending regulation that comes into effect on July 1st of this year. This new legislation will allow affected workers to pay on gratuities for the first time. And NIB has been preparing for this change since 2010 and will be ready on day one like their government.
Thank God. Thank God. Thank God.
Mr. Speaker, it's important to note, right, that when I was minister back in 2004, I appointed a Social Security Reform Commission. That commission, Mr. Speaker, was headed by Mr. Alfred Stewart. They made a lot of recommendations. It was a comprehensive report and they made a recommendation, which I tabled in this honorable place, and as a result of that commission, that is why these things were able to be implemented. If that commission had not done its work, these things could not have been implemented. And so what was implemented was only what was reported and recommended by the commission headed by Mr. Alfred Stewart, which was appointed while I was minister, but at the behest of the Right Honorable Prime Minister at that time. Because he saw the need for these changes, and he asked me and officially appointed the commission. Just for those persons who would think that this happened between 2007 and 2012. There are some exciting developments in NIB, and some of these will be rolled out as early as today. Customers will soon be able to request and receive letters of good standing from any location, doing away with the centralization that now exists. Managers in each office and island will have the authority to approve letters requested at their location, Mr. Speaker. No longer will they all have to come to one centralized location to request letters of good standing. To improve on customer service, NIB continues to encourage employers to submit their C10 online, and payments may also be submitted online through Royal Bank of Canada for Royal Bank of Canada customers. To further assist employers, NIB has opened an express payment window at its New Providence local office on Blue Road, all in an effort to have employers' payments processed more quickly. Mr. Speaker, finally, the National Insurance Fund at December 31st, 2012 was some $1.634 billion, returning a 4.8% for the year. And the fund at the end of last year stood at $1.634 billion with returns of 4.8%. The fund remained heavily invested in the government of the Bahamas at approximately 74%, primarily in real estate, finance leases, quasi-government debt, and Bahamas government-registered stock. Over the years, NIB has been assisting in the financing of government building projects, including, Mr. Speaker, healthcare facilities and administrative complexes in excess of some $225 million to date. The NIB has a substantial investment in the development of infrastructure in the Bahamas through its investment, Mr. Speaker, in the Nassau Airport Development Company, that's NAD, where NIB invested some $76 million in NAD. I believe that that investment will perhaps yield the highest return from all the other investment, if I'm not mistaken. Since May of 2012, NIB has assisted the Public Hospital Authority in the purchase of mammography machines of some $1.8 million and the purchase of equipment for the new critical care facility of some $10 million. Plans are also underway for the new mini hospitals and clinics in Lutheran and Cat Island. NIB will also play a crucial financial role, Mr. Speaker, in the housing program for the Ministry of Environment and Housing and the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation. And all of these projects return current market rates to the National Insurance Fund. NIB will continue to review proposals from the government and in the national interest, and will only invest surplus funds if it is in keeping with its policy statement. And so investing in housing, Mr. Speaker, even though that wannabe politician who Ryan continue to put a good licking on every time he try to run, open his mouth talking.
Member for Elizabeth.
Oh, I'm sorry, the member for Elizabeth. Every time he raises his head, Ryan.
Member for Elizabeth.
Oh, sorry, Elizabeth. Every time he raises his head, Elizabeth, where you going? Where you going? So I suspect, Mr. Speaker, with Elizabeth running and with my help, he will be a wannabe politician for a while. And so his best job is to continue to provide commentary. He is best at providing commentary. Anytime you want a critic, you go look for him. You know, he will be a critic to his own family. He is so good at it. But he is a man of broken hearts, I must admit. Yeah, so he's a man of broken hearts. I give him credit for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
A man of broken hearts? Somebody searches his heart.
Mr. Speaker, I now move to NIB Property Management Company. This is something that we are looking at considering. The NIB is very involved in the development and management of real estate properties on behalf of the government. While, Mr. Speaker, this is not a core function of NIB, it consumes a significant amount of time and human resources on both staff and board of directors. Two of the national insurance schemes in the region has separated their real estate management from the core national insurance function, and they are now wholly owned subsidiaries of the National Insurance Fund. They have their own human resources, their own CEO, their own administration, and their own board of directors and subcommittees. This segregation of the technical aspect of the National Insurance Board will allow the board to focus, Mr. Speaker, on its core functions, which are the collection of contributions and the payments of benefits. It would also provide additional revenue streams as it allows for potential commercial ventures separate and apart from the government. And this type of subsidiary is currently being considered by the National Insurance Board. Be assured, Mr. Speaker, that the National Insurance Fund is still very strong. And to keep it that way, and to ensure that good decisions are made at all levels at all times, the board is currently in the process of establishing a set of good corporate governance guidelines that will help guide NIB's operations at all levels. Good governance practices are important in both public sector and private sector business, and so I certainly welcome these initiatives which the board will be introducing, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why it is important to introduce good corporate governance is because if you don't, you have situations where individuals are able to take advantage of the processes at NIB. I just want to read you, Mr. Speaker, a small portion of an email that was sent from the owner of Reef Construction to the architect when they were considering who they should hire as electrical contractors for the mini hospital in Exuma. It says, off the record, I'm having some difficulties with this is from Vernon Wells now, the owner of Reef, to the architect. I'm having some difficulties understanding the powers to be on Kenyu's behalf with regards to the electrical subcontract. Only minutes after receiving an email from Kenyu informing me that they will not accept the figures that we had provided from our tender for the electrical portion of the works which we had provided to them since last week with no response, I got a call from Cargill and Moxie saying that NIB does not recognize the contract that I had as first choice if Kenyu refused to accept. This is from William Wells. This is important, Mr. Speaker, because when Wells submitted his bid for the Exuma Clinic, he didn't have Kenyu down as electrical contractor. He had a man out of Grand Bahama. He then got a call from Mr. Cargill, he said late one night, telling him that, insisting that he use Kenyu in that project. And of course, Kenyu's position was, listen, you could use me, but I need more money than you allocated in the project. So Wells was actually objecting to the process and objecting to the fact that if he had to use Kenyu, then he had to use them at the same price he submitted in his bids, in his bid. And not only that, you could see what they did. After he said, well, he didn't want to use Kenyu, they then tell him that the man he's sending ain't qualified, ain't certified. You know, so the idea is either you use him, or we'll say to you that the man you send me is not qualified to do the job. This is what they said. They also said that there's no record of the company, and this is a company that Wells submitted, that I put forward along with the three-phase license, all of which are provided to Cost Engineering with no objection. I told him that the documents submitted on his behalf would then have to be forged, as they seem to be duly executed by the government from them. So Wells saying, listen, man, I submitted all the documents. They're all certified copies. It was accepted by Cost Engineering. Why is it you tell me now the man's not qualified? But this is the strong-arm tactics they use to pull on Wells to insist that he use Kenyu Electric and that. And of course, he went on to talk about how Kenyu already had Abaco and he had all these other projects, so he wanted to give somebody else a chance. But of course, they just tightened the nose to that stage. I said, listen, either you use this man or you can't use nobody else. And so we got to email him, Mr. Speaker, where they officially objected. And I can make this available for members of officers if they want it as well, because I know they like to see these things in black and white. I have no difficulty with that. And so that is why, Mr. Speaker, it's important for us to put good corporate governance in place at NIB. And so hopefully, between this week and next week, a decision will be made as to who the new director of NIB would be. That person will be charged with moving NIB, of course, from heights to heights. I think the Senance may know already. I don't know. They had a what? Okay. Mr. Speaker, I remain confident that the current leadership of the board, led by Dr. James Motry, chairman, and the newly appointed, whoever the newly appointed director is, will collect what is due, pay who is owed, and keep a tight rein on expenditure as to ensure operating costs remains manageable. I give my assurance to the Bahamian people as well that they can be confident that their pension dollars are safe and the Social Security program will continue to deliver the promise it made in 1974 and every day since, Mr. Speaker, as workers of this country are depending on it. Mr. Speaker, I now move to Consumer Affairs. The Consumer Affairs Division of the Ministry has a very important role in protecting the health and safety of our people by ensuring the quality and sufficiency of goods and services in the market. You're aware, no doubt, that the particular section under the previous administration has labored assiduously to preserve the rights of consumers throughout the length and breadth of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. In fact, Mr. Speaker, it was under the considered watch of the Progressive Liberal Party that the government sought to bring consumer affairs closer to the people by employing and placing these officers in almost every family island throughout the Bahamas. This process continued with the recruitment and employment of price inspectors domiciled in their native islands. Mr. Speaker, my ministry will seek, as soon as practicable, to appoint members to the Consumer Protection Commission to facilitate and administrate the provision of the Consumer Protection Act 2006. And this act is intended to give full protection to consumers and to regulate the market for the benefit of its users by providing redress for persons who would have been adversely affected by their transactions accordingly. Further, my ministry will seek to expand the role of consumer education with the engagement of a consumer analyst as we seek to play a more meaningful role in expanding the dialogue with merchants and all of those economic activities in which trade exists and Bahamians are active consumers. Mr. Speaker, we'll also be taking recommendations to my colleagues very soon. You may not know, but the price of LPG gas reduced significantly over the years, and that savings was never actually passed on to the consumer. And so we'll be bringing recommendations to reduce the cost of LPG gas very shortly as well to my colleagues. Also, Mr. Speaker, we had lots of complaints from the producers of eggs where they're looking at a wider margin of profit that would take care of the increase in expenses for their various businesses. And so we've already gotten, in addition to having recommendations from the from Consumer Affairs on the reduction of LPG, we also got a recommendation on widening the margin of profit for those persons who import eggs or retail eggs. And we've also been asked by them to increase the duty, which we have not gotten a consensus on yet, as they want to increase the duty on imports that would discourage persons from bringing eggs from outside the country and force them to buy locally produced eggs. Of course, the thought right now is that the persons who produce now cannot take care of the market as it exists. And their argument is if you increase the duty on imports of eggs, we will then be able to expand to produce the amount of eggs required. Yeah, those, what do you call them? Organic. These are organic eggs. And so those, the eggs that cost $7 or $8 are not eggs that are under price control. They're eggs that they insist are organic eggs, and they're presently not covered by price control. But we have the regular eggs that are still under price control that you would find, they're still, I think, around under $2, around $2. How much is it? Yeah, but the organic eggs are not covered by price control. So persons will know that is why they see those eggs being sold for that amount of money. Of course, Mr. Speaker, on the Bureau of Standards, my ministry, Mr. Speaker, is committed. We are committed to accelerating the establishment of the Bureau of Standards. The development of standards will ensure, Mr. Speaker, that products and services are safe, reliable, and of good quality. An example of a standard which protects human safety and health is labeling on food items. Labels should indicate all ingredients to avoid potential fatal allergic reactions. For business, standards are strategic tools that reduce costs by minimizing waste, selling substandard products and errors, and increase productivity. The Speaker, standards help companies to access new markets, level the playing field for developing countries as such as the Bahamas, and facilitate free and fair global trade. Last April, Mr. Speaker, Mr. David Tomlinson from Crosco, metrology officer, conducted a survey of the capacity demand for metrology services in the Bahamas, and his aim is to determine and to justify the equipment that is being purchased in 2014 under the 10th CRIP and TPT program. technical barrier to trade program. Each member state will receive some 40,000 euros from this project to assist in the public-private sector service with metrology equipment, Mr. Speaker. And so it's going to be very important in terms of establishing our Standards Bureau. Based on the demands for survey results, the following priority list ranging from highest to lowest of needs was generated based on that report. And so the report listed like labeling of food products and food standardization at the national and regional level, verification of fuel expenses, weights, balances, and electrical meters, LPG cylinder standards, maintenance, handling, refilling of tanks from all LPG gas companies, bottled water standards. As you know, we have an issue now where some people produce water right in their backyard, slap a label on it, put a cap on, and they sell it as bottled water. Mr. Speaker, concrete block testing, this is important because a lot of people get these cracks in their houses and they don't know why. And that is because I don't think that we have and in some instances they don't properly monitor the construction of these blocks. And so when you think you have a block that's properly cured, you have a block sometimes that was made yesterday, they put it in the house, and then the house started to fall apart and you wonder why. And then you start to blame the contractor. You know, and so when you talk about a block being a certain amount of PSI, the concrete being a certain amount of PSI, and these things are not tested on a regular basis, then you get these defective products. You look at the calibration services and training of the major suppliers of fuel, technical regulations of petroleum delivery, medical lab staff's evaluation and qualifications, more trained personnel in food and safety and technology labs. So, Mr. Speaker, all these things are very important. In some instances, Mr. Speaker, we may find that some of the services that we may need and some of the infrastructure may be accessible in some of our regional countries, so we may find it's not necessary to develop everything here in the Bahamas. But because of our partnership with our regional colleagues, we're able to use some of the infrastructure in developing our Standards Bureau as well. Mr. Speaker, my ministry recognizes the timeliness of this report and has begun the initial phase of a written proposal to CROSCO for professional training of our staff in standardization, quality assurance, and conformity assessment services. Mr. Speaker, in March 2009, the government of the Bahamas began the formal process of acceding to the WTO Technical Barrier to Trade. Implementation of the Technical Barrier to Trade Agreement will offer the Bahamas the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to institute changes in the regulatory regime which will not only fulfill commitments with respect to international trade rules, but also improve the well-being of the Bahamian society. And so, Mr. Speaker, we expect that once we're able to bring on and fully establish the Standards Bureau, we'll be able to do monitor most of these things through the Bureau. Of course, with the bridge authority, Mr. Speaker, which also comes under my portfolio, we have already gotten the technical assessment of the second bridge, and even though the initial report said that we may have had to build a third bridge, all indications are that we don't have to build a third bridge for the next couple of years anyhow. We're going to invest several $1 million repairing the first bridge that was built, and once we complete those repairs, that bridge should be able to last for about 5 or 10 years, eliminating the need to build a third bridge at this particular time. And so even though the toll has been the same for quite a number of years, and the fee schedule that was put in place was actually put in place when the bridge was first built, I think, or launched back in 1967. We are now reviewing all of those, and hopefully we will come up with a new fee schedule that will really be able to help us to maintain the, not only the first bridge, but the second bridge that was built as well. Mr. Speaker, the public service. I now turn my attention to the public service. Since entering into the public service, I am sure many of you have been hearing that the public service is embarking on something new. Yet for the last 40 years, you may say to yourself that nothing has happened. The truth is, many things have changed and are continuing to change. Yet there are many things that need to be done in the public service, and the accomplishment of our goals will require collective action. Mr. Speaker, as we seek to reform the public service to do so, we have elected to focus on 3 main principles, namely efficiency, effectiveness, monitoring, and evaluation. Mr. Speaker, many of our critics complain that the public service processes take too long. In addition, over the past year, on a daily basis, we have been faced with complaints from staff who believe that they have been unfairly treated or inadvertently overlooked for promotion, confirmation, or regularization of status. Despite the fact that staff within the Ministry of Public Service work long hours on a regular basis, many without overtime pay, Mr. Speaker, it takes too long to process almost any matter from beginning to end. And there are several obvious reasons for this. Most obvious is that by its very nature, the public service is a bureaucratic organization and is governed by a set of strict policies and procedures. However, there are other challenges to be addressed if we are to achieve our vision of sustaining a competent, professional, productive, responsive, and accountable public service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a substantial portion of the recurrent budget is allocated to staff in the public service, with an estimated 20,000 employees. The public service is not understaffed. However, there is a dire shortage of skill sets in many front office and clerical areas, such as records management, registry procedures, office procedures, writing skills, supervision, customer service, and telephone answering protocol. In addition, there's a need to strengthen supervision in all areas and levels, and there are several hundred public officers who have not had the benefit of orientation in the public service. And so, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the amount of money we spent on personal emoluments over the past 10 years, we can see where in 2003, 2004, some $464 million was spent on personal emoluments. 2004, 2005, $513 million. In 2008, 2009, it jumped to $670 million. You had a reduction in 2010, 2011 to 648. In 2012, 2012, you had some 668. And of course, this year, we're estimating some $655 million to be spent on personal emoluments. And so if you look at the percentage of the overall budget, personal emoluments account for some 37.8% of the overall budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in times of austerity, training and development is usually the first area to be cut. However, I'm of the view that as we move forward with building the second generation post-public service, a renewed focus and investment in training would reap substantial return in the future. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, we lost focus. And in the past years, our training department has become underutilized and overwhelmed by the issues surrounding a lack of a training facility. For many years, the center was housed in a cramped and ill-equipped facility, which became totally uninhabitable due to hurricane damage. As a result, the Ministry of the Public Service has been renting church and school halls to hold training sessions. Demoralization set in as staff saw their dream of a modern center evaporate when the facility they helped to design was assigned to another agency due to extenuating circumstances. Mr. Speaker, it has taken about 3 years, but finally, we have regained our focus and the wandering will cease. Within the 2013-2014 budget year, the Public Service Center for Human Resources Development will occupy a state-of-the-art training facility in the JL Center located on Blake Road. The center will be fully equipped with computer rooms, modern classrooms, and learning systems, which is evidence that this administration is serious about bringing training into the 21st century as a vehicle for modernizing and reforming the public service. Mr. Speaker, strengthening of the public service registries, record management unions is essential to achieving the desired level of efficiency. Indeed, if training is the blood, then the records are the veins that take the blood throughout the public service, Mr. Speaker. Recognizing the importance of an efficient records management system, the Ministry of the Public Service has advanced a pilot initiative